In the shadow she lurks, a digital sage. Her words cut through like a sharpened blade. Political cow, her voice brings rage. A rebel in the neon-born parade. With a keyboard she wields her might, piercing lies with truth's own light. Drifting through the endless night, exposing wrongs to make them right. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meets. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows through every corner, every show. A beacon where the lost crowds glow. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows through every corner, every show. A beacon where the lost crowds go. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word.
Man, that was quick. That was like the quickest intro I've ever had. What's going on, people? Is my music still going? I need my music. Yeah, it's going on nice and low in the background. I appreciate it. So I hope everybody's doing good. Had a nice Monday, Tuesday, setting up for a Wednesday now, or Wednesday if you're in Central Time Zone. It's nonstop winning. I think we're going to have more freakouts happening in front of us. I don't know what else to say about it, folks. Check out the poll. Who do you think's the best press secretary here? I already got a couple of votes coming in for Karoline. Some people preferred Karoline. I hear that. I don't know. I guess it's up to you what you guys want to take a look at. It's interesting how she introduced herself versus Karoline. Maybe we'll do that as part of a video. That's a good idea, actually. I'll write that down for myself. But hey, like, subscribe, help me get this circulated out there a little bit more. We're looking for cow politics, bring back civility, some humor, and one thing I want to do, you see it on the screen there, QR code. I want to get folks to dial in. I'll put a link to the call-in as a pinned chat here in a moment, but call in, folks. I want to give people an opportunity to express their thoughts. If you're on mobile, take a screenshot, go into your Photos app, and just tap that QR code. It'll link you right to the call-in. You don't have to like type anything in at that point or whatever. Again, if you're on mobile, screenshot, go to Photos app, and just tap that QR code, and it'll take you to the call-in link. It'll get you all in. Just want to give people, it doesn't matter what your view is. You don't have to agree with me. I may ask you a few questions, but I'm not trying to pin you or do the gotcha type stuff that you might see some of those unsavory folks on different platforms doing. I'm more interested in people vocalizing their thought process and opinions and allowing people an opportunity, the audience, to think through what's going on here, right? Sandy says, my wife left me because I ate 19 pudding cups. Well, that's unfortunate. Should have stuck with 18, I guess. Anyhow, before we get going, though, let's bring this up, because we're going to take a look at the press briefing, but my goodness, has it been quite a day, folks. Has it been quite a day? Are y'all watching the itty bitty out there? Look at this drop. When was the start of the day? Okay. So around here, 95,000. The low, 86,000. Almost a $10,000 drop. Right? I mean, it's well over 10% here at this point in Bitcoin, from the high point to the low point in the last 24 hours. Bitcoin's taken a massive drop. And, our stream sponsor that we've had there, Noble Gold, check out the links in the past streams. I don't know if it loaded up right now to share with you guys, but check out past streams. You'll see the links and everything to them. I've been telling you guys, we're going to need to look at some alternative investment vehicles, diversify out there. This is not looking too good. I mean, not financial advice. I'm just my personal opinion sharing in case you hadn't noticed. Bitcoin's not doing too hot. It is an alternative, monetary instrument, but even it's not immune from volatility. And there's countless numbers of people that bought in at the peak. That's how it kind of goes. I don't want to delve into this too much, but I mean, just looking at it, I'd say this is the range that folks probably maybe looking at. 91.5 to 92.4, 91.5, 92.4, that $900 range right here. See that funny green candle in the midst of this downdraft. It may creep back up here, okay? And depending on what other indicators look like, it'll give us a signal of, will it blast through? Will it tap, go down a little bit and blast through? Or will it just die on the vine? Let me just pull one of these here. See what we're looking at. Oh, would you look at that? Would you look at that? I just spotted this for you guys too, right? I said what? It's going to be somewhere between 91.5 and 92.4. And look at that. The golden pocket right in there. So we have some confluence building. Anyway, not going to go too deep into it. It's not what we're after today. We don't want to listen into Karoline, but a watch point, because more and more companies are announcing layoffs. Walmart has now also indicated that their sales growth is not as expected by Wall Street. So we may see a steady stream of more and more disappointing earnings reports coming out from companies. Remains to be seen. All right, let's get Karoline out there. Wait a minute, that's not Karoline. What the heck's going on? Did I just get hacked? What's going on here, guys? What the heck? Karoline, where'd you go? There we go. Call in too, folks. We'll bring you in, give your thoughts, the whole bit.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. How are we today? Good. During his inaugural address, President Trump promised that America would be a manufacturing nation once again, and liberal pundits mocked him for it. But those critics were proven wrong once again. On the heels of President Trump's Oval Office meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook last week, Apple just announced its largest ever commitment to American jobs and industry, with plans to spend and invest more than $500 billion in America over the next 4 years. Over the course of the current Trump administration, Apple plans to hire around 20,000 new workers, creating high-paying jobs right here in America. And the investment isn't limited to one specific region of our country. Apple teams and facilities will expand all over our country in Arizona, California, Iowa, Nevada, North Carolina, Michigan, Oregon, Texas, and Washington. With President Trump in charge, America is open for business. Apple CEO Tim Cook said it best in the company's announcement. We are bullish on the future of American innovation. On top of this incredible Apple announcement, President Trump already announced more than $1 trillion in pledged investments into the United States. And on another important note that the American people entrusted President Trump to fulfill, this administration's efforts to seal the border continue to prove extraordinarily successful. In President Trump's first month back in office alone, illegal border crossings hit lows not seen in decades, down 94% over the past year, while interior arrests are up 134%. And this past Saturday, this is a significant statistic that I wanted to share with all of you. There were only 220 illegal border crossings on Saturday. This is a 15-year low. Think about that in comparison to the amount of illegal border crossings we saw under the previous administration. Fox recently reported that a San Diego migrant shelter is closing its doors after saying they have not received new asylum-seeking families or individuals since January 20th. We all know what happened on January 20th, don't we? And yesterday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced that the massive Roosevelt Hotel migrant shelter in Manhattan will shut down in the next few months. We're also seeing a reverse migration effect. There are now verified reports from the Associated Press of migrants abandoning their journey to the United States and heading back home. This is the first time the Border Patrol has received these reports since 2020, during President Trump's first term. The returning migrants claimed in interviews that the new heavy security posture adopted by the Trump administration was a significant reason for their decision to return to the countries of their origin. Overall, the American people continue to overwhelmingly give President Trump very positive remarks. Nearly every one of President Trump's policy initiatives are receiving strong majority support, and I have noted that in every briefing since Inauguration Day. 81% of Americans support deporting illegal migrant criminals from our nation's interior. 76% of Americans support the DOGE-led efforts of a full-scale investigation to find and eliminate fraud and waste in government expenditures. Again, this is from a Harvard-Harris poll, a very legitimate pollster. 76% of Americans support closing the border. 69% of Americans support President Trump's common sense efforts to ban men from women's sports. As you all know, we celebrated that executive order at the White House a couple of weeks ago. 65% of Americans support the president's efforts to eliminate all preferences by race in the hiring and awarding of government contracts, which is another pledge that DOGE is working hard to fulfill. And 61% of Americans, vast majority, support the president's plan for reciprocal tariffs to ensure that other countries are treating us the way we have always been treated. Despite what many Democrats and media members want you to believe, the Trump agenda is not only necessary, but it is overwhelmingly popular. Why? Because it's driven by common sense. And finally, as you all saw yesterday, a federal judge denied the Associated Press's emergency motion for a temporary restraining order against myself, our Deputy Chief of Staff Taylor Budowich, and our Chief of Staff Susie Wiles for our decision to remove the Associated Press from the White House press pool for certain and special events. The judge's ruling, upholding our decision to deny the Associated Press such privileged access, reinforces the truth. And it reiterates what I said from this podium last week when that suit was filed. Asking the President of the United States questions in limited spaces such as the Oval Office in Air Force One is a privilege that unfortunately has only been granted to a few, It is not a legal right for all. The Trump administration has already proven to be the most transparent ever, and this president the most accessible in history. This is evidenced by President Trump's daily press conferences in the Oval Office, where he takes many questions from the journalists who have the honor and privilege of standing before the beautiful Resolute desk. The president and this entire White House are committed to ensuring the American people continue to receive this same level of historic transparency, access, and visibility. In fact, we want to double down and give even greater access to the American people. We want more outlets and new outlets to have a chance to take part in the press pool, to cover this administration's unprecedented achievements up close, front and center. As you all know, for decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well. As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the president's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast. This is the ever-changing landscape of the media in the United States today. We will continue to rotate a print pooler who has the great responsibility of quickly transcribing the president's remarks and disseminating them to the rest of the world. And we will add outlets to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in this experience, but are committed to covering this White House beat. We will continue to rotate a radio pooler and add other radio hosts who have been denied access, especially local radio hosts who serve as the heartbeat of our country.
So it sounds like she's taking additional steps here. They had an alternative media, I don't remember the exact terming, seat where they brought in, folks from Newsmax and other agencies. They had CEO of Rumble come in and open up with a question. She might do the same here after her opening remarks are done, but looks like they're going to have more seats to rotate in folks. What consequence of that is that some major media outlets might have to sit out if they start occupying more seats.
We will add additional outlets and reporters who are well suited to cover the news of the day and ask substantive questions of the President of the United States, depending on the news he is making on that given day. This administration is shaking up Washington in more ways than one. That's what we were elected to do. As I have said since the first day behind this podium, it's beyond time that the White House press operation reflects the media habits of the American people in 2025, not 1925. A select group of DC-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly over the privilege of press access at the White House. All journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table. So by deciding which outlets make up the limited press pool on a day-to-day basis, the White House will be restoring power back to the American people who President Trump was elected to serve. So in that note, in our new media seat today, we have Shelby Talcott, who is a White House reporter for Semaphore. In 2022, Semaphore launched as a global digital news platform with the aim of bringing meaningful innovations to the news industry. Today, they have nearly 1 million newsletter subscribers spanning 11 separate editions.
So they're going to actively decide. It's not going to be a pool of news agencies that help divvy this up, which, again, you could see how the media starts to control and take a foothold over things and control the narrative, right? Because you have to agree with them to get in there. They're going to decide actively who is in attendance on a day-to-day basis. So you think about all the minor tweaks that have happened this second cycle and everything that's been done, very calculated, right? It's very calculated, and everything seems really, I don't know, in lockstep. So I don't know if this is a new thing that they just came to a realization of, or it's part of a sequence of things that are going to continue to be rolled out here.
With that, Shelby, I will take your questions.
Thanks, Karoline. I've got two for you. One on foreign policy. Over the weekend, the president's special missions envoy, Rick Grenell, was talking about Venezuela, and he said that the president isn't someone who wants regime change. Other administration officials have made clear that they don't see Maduro as the rightful leader. What is this administration's policy on a new government in Venezuela?
I think the president has made his position on Venezuela quite clear. He stands in opposition to the Maduro regime, and Secretary Rubio has spoken on this extensively as well.
And then on DOGE, last night Elon Musk said that a failure to respond a second time will result in termination. Will there be additional rounds of the "what did you do this week" email from DOGE to federal workers? And what's the guidance on the federal workers who've been instructed by their agencies not to reply?
So a couple of things on this. First of all, let's just take a step back and talk about this idea. The president sent out a truth last weekend to Elon Musk saying he loves everything Elon is doing and he wants him to be even more aggressive because DOGE thus far has proven incredibly successful in making our government more efficient. And so Elon and DOGE came up with this idea. Elon has implemented
Double J. I hope you don't mind me calling that. I got a buddy that was Double J. Anyway, and pro wrestling friend from way back when, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Anyway, so Jim, I think excellent point, right? She walks in there, and she might just have a script that is her opening remarks or some notes, but not the binder of everything that's, any possibility of any question that could ever be asked that she has to cycle through before she can respond to things. I'd say this is very similar to Amy Coney Barrett when she, went through her nomination process and the confirmation process. Didn't have anything with her in front of the Senate. She just sat there and answered honestly. So I mean, you kind of stick to facts and principle and honesty, and you don't have to go through these types of great lengths to keep narratives going otherwise. There is no narrative. There's just the truth.
Companies that has proven successful. And it's a very simple idea when you think about it. All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayers' dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week. That is all we are asking for. And so the Office of Personnel and Management sent out additional guidance last night. Those responses should be directed to agency leadership, and the president defers to his cabinet secretaries, who he's obviously entrusted to pursue the guidance relative to their specific workforce. And for some of the agencies that you've seen who have said, please don't send these emails, it's in their best interest for that specific agency, and the president supports that. And let me be very clear, the president and Elon, his entire cabinet are working as one unified team, and they are implementing these very common sense solutions. You're welcome. Jackie.
Thank you. One follow-up question. So about the deadline, Alina Habba said that you have until tonight. Elon Musk said a failure to respond a second time would result in termination. So is that a real deadline? Should federal workers be looking to that guidance, or should they be looking to the agency heads? Like, what is the actual deadline?
So again, the agency heads will determine the best practices for their employees at their specific agencies. Again, this was an idea that Elon come up with. DOGE worked with OPM to actually implement the idea, and the secretaries are responsible for their specific workforce. And this is true of the hirings and the firings that have taken place. And we advise federal workers, unless your agency has dictated you not to respond to this email. In fact, I can announce that we've had more than 1 million workers who have chosen to participate in this very simple task of, again, sending 5 bullet points to your direct supervisor or manager, CCing OPM. I actually participated in myself. It took me about a minute and a half to think of 5 things I did last week. I do 5 things in about 10 minutes, and all federal workers should be working at the same pace that President Trump is working and moving. We have a country to save, and we want this federal government to be responsive to the needs of the American people who re-elected this president to have historic, massive reform, and that's what the intention of this idea is.
Can you clarify one thing, though?
mean, it's really not that big of an ask, right? I'm going to use the DMV example, right? At the DMV, 5 things they did last week, you could just say like, customer service dash processed applications for, XYZ, right? Attended training for whatever, mentored new employee on XY. Not that hard. You're done. Send it in. The fact that this is such a contentious issue is bizarre to me because private sector wise, which 99, well, not 99%, many people operate in the private sector. This is a continuous discussion. It's not necessarily an email. It's a continuous discussion of, hey, here's what was done, not even weekly, sometimes daily. Here's what I got done yesterday, or here's what I need help with. I mean, that's the important thing. Government gets stuck on something and they just sit. We don't want things to sit. We want things to get taken care of. Oh, and hey, let me put the QR code up a little bit bigger here. So take a photo if you're on mobile and then tap that QR code once you get into your Photos app. That's probably the quickest way to dial in. But if anybody has any thoughts or whatever, dial in. I also got it pinned in the YouTube stream chat, the link. And finally, the link is also available in my bio. You just click through the link tree and it should be the first link to participate in the guest call-in. Anyway, check it out.
A reason that they wanted this 5 things email was just to see if people are actually alive, citing that there are some federal workers who might not even be alive. So meantime, NBC is reporting that these responses are going to go into an AI generator to evaluate whether these jobs are necessary. So is it just to see if people are actually working, or is it an effort to maybe cut some of those jobs?
I have not seen that NBC News report, and I haven't heard that from DOGE or from Elon himself. Again, this is to ensure that federal workers are not ripping off American taxpayers, that they are showing up to the office, and that they are doing their jobs. That's what the American people expect, and it's a very simple task to complete. I did it myself, and I was more than happy to do it because I'm very grateful that I am serving the American people on the American taxpayers' dime.
All right, we'll pause it on that question. So we're talking about DOGE now. Simon, Australia needs DOGE, but our government is way more corrupt. Let me put that up on the screen for everybody. 400 million on voice referendum, for example. Ooh. 5 things email is not useful or practical. It's pointless showpiece that has no value. Pauline, the interesting thing is the fact that people struggle so much with it, and it's become such a contentious issue. It's kind of like that episode of The Office where Creed was asked by the lady that came in to help make the office more efficient what he did, and he just kind of like snuck out and he's freaking out because Creed didn't do anything in the office, but everybody just agreed that he was just kind of there. Let me share real quick. If you go to doge.gov, all right, let me share this tab. Hang on a sec, guys. Let me bring this up. All right, got that. Let me make it bigger. Oh, hang on. Bear with me. All right. Hopefully you can see that. So this is doge.gov. It is a government-run website. It's updates from the DOGE. So you can see the steady stream of posts as new things come up. But now they have these nice little tabs at the top. Let me click on savings. Let's see what we got here, right? You can come in here and get summaries like Bureau of Land Management, right? Latest wall of receipts that are happening here. You can see more. Real estate, see more, so forth. Spend. Here's an interesting one, right? Full year 2019, full year 2020 comparison. So pre-COVID, which is a pretty good baseline year before inflation ran wild. And then, of course, now, look at this. Department of Health and Human Services. 1.2 trillion, because this is in the billions, right? 1.2 trillion versus today, 1.7 trillion. How in the world did expenditures accelerate 500 billion? I mean, a short-term blip because of COVID or something else. I can see that, but it's insanity to me. How is that even possible, right? And I think at the bottom, Elon or whomever's constructing the website, compiling the data, talked about a 80+% increase in budget overall. Look at Social Security Administration, $400 million more. Expenditures, not taxes taken in, expenditures. That's what's making it insolvent at this point. Department of Treasury. Why does the Treasury increase spending to that degree? Right? What are they doubling their expenditures for? Look at the defense budget. The VA, right? You go down the list, it's astronomical, right? And by the time you get into the 30 billion range, Department of Justice, so forth, you got to look at these, right? But, oh, look at this one, right? Small Business Administration, okay? $500 million, right? 0.5 billion. Now 33 billion. What the heck happened to the Small Business Administration? What's going on there? Right? It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand what the heck is going on. All right, let's bring back Karoline here.
Giving you a front row seat to democracy.
President Macron.
Okay, thank you very much. We're having some...
Cut some of those jobs.
I have not seen that NBC News report, and I haven't heard that from DOGE or from Elon himself. Again, this is to ensure that federal workers are not ripping off American taxpayers, that they are showing up to the office, and that they are doing their jobs. That's what the American people expect, and it's a very simple task to complete. I did it myself, and I was more than happy to do it because I'm very grateful that I am serving the American people on the American taxpayers' dime.
Do you think DOGE should hire a spokesperson just so that Elon Musk doesn't put out tweets that then confuse federal workers?
Are my press briefings not good enough for you, Jackie? John.
Carolyn, thank you. In the ruling by Judge McFadden yesterday, who dismissed the lawsuit that AP brought against yourself and your team members here, President Trump, in there he said, why not just do away with the entire White House Correspondents Association along with it, because essentially they have no authority. They just usurped it. What is your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, John, it's great to see you. And you are one of those individuals who has you're on a streaming platform that hundreds of thousands of people tune into every day. So it's great to see you in the briefing room. I did address that actually in my opening remarks by announcing that the White House press team in this administration will determine who gets to enjoy the very privileged and limited access in spaces such as Air Force One and the Oval Office. There are, as you know, look at this room, hundreds of journalists who show up to this building every single day and are not granted that luxury of flying on Air Force One and asking the President of the United States questions. And so we want to ensure, again, everyone has a seat.
Hang on, I got to rewind this question again. I missed
alas,
something.
The legacy media outlets who have... Well, John.
He brought against yourself and your team members here, President Trump. In there he said, why not just do away with the entire White House Correspondents Association along with it, because essentially they have no authority. They just usurped it. What is your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, John, it's great to see you. And you are one of those individuals who has you're on a streaming platform that hundreds of thousands of people tune into every day. So it's great to see you in the briefing room. I did address that actually in my opening remarks by announcing that the White House press team in this administration will determine who gets to enjoy the very privileged and limited access in spaces such as Air Force One and the Oval Office. There are, as you know, look at this room, hundreds of journalists who show up to this building every single day and are not granted that luxury of flying on Air Force One and asking the President of the United States questions. And so we want to ensure, again, everyone has a seat at that highly coveted table. But alas, the legacy media outlets who have been doing this for quite some time and have invested resources into covering the White House, their spots will remain, just like they have in this briefing room as well.
So I'm not going to jump to my AI right now, but the Correspondents Association is an interesting one if they're the ones determining things and the White House is taking that power back. I think is, you know what, why not? I mean, if they're not behaving properly, just allow people that are going to report properly in there, right? It's Just scanning the chat comments real quick here. Steven talking about open borders. Jason, can't expect them to have pictures and details and context for every. Let me put this up on the screen here for everybody. Every bit of money that they save or that they do away with, they've gotten plenty of examples. I'm sure they'll keep on. And, you know, if you go to doge.gov, they actually give you a screenshot directly from their ERP system that shows the contract details, the contract amount, expenditures to date, so forth. It's fascinating to me that they're even making that visible. And yet people claim there's no transparency. They're making the actual data that's in the system visible to you directly. They're not just like typing it in, like saying, oh, it's like, 5 million or whatever. They're showing it to you live from the system that maintains all of their contracts, financial transactions, and everything. I mean, that's why it was important for them to have access to these things so that they can actually, look at things live and not have to look at like sanitized views of data, let's say, that other people would have presented to them. They need to see it from the source, and they're sharing that source with you live.
Steve.
Could you give us an update on the negotiations around the Ukraine minerals deal, and when is President Zelensky going to come visit?
So the president talked at length about this yesterday, the critical minerals deal with President Macron, and in the more than hour-long press conference he gave all of you in the Oval Office himself. There hasn't been significant updates since the president's remarks last night, but I will just reiterate his position. It's critical that this deal is signed. He expects President Zelensky to sign a deal. This is to recoup American tax dollars that have been funding Ukraine's national defense. And it's also great for the Ukrainian people who have been put through hell because of this war. And it will create a lasting economic partnership as Ukraine will need to rebuild their country because of this brutal war.
And just to follow, is Steve Witkoff delayed his trip to the Middle East so he can concentrate on this minerals deal?
I don't want to comment on Mr. Witkoff's travel plans or read anything out just for obvious reasons, but he, remains very much working. That man is working around the clock.
Hey, interesting remark. Where was it? I lost it here. I lost it. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? So MD, I shared the link to the DOGE website. Where did that go? We shouldn't have one bit of... Okay, hold on a second. I missed it. Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. Thomas. Except DOGE has been caught fudging numbers on the contracts they reported to have gotten rid of. They've clarified some of this data, and some of it's just learning because, again, they brought in, a batch of folks a little bit on the junior side in terms of tenure and working in massive organizations, but extremely brilliant data scientists, data engineers that can find anomalies, look for correlations, and do a lot of that type of activity at scale and very rapidly. But some of the context when they look at the data, sometimes you'll have a total contract amount. You'll sign a contract with a company. Total contract amount is $10 million, but you would not necessarily have issued expenditures to that amount. You may have only issued 5 to date. But once you reach that $10 million, it's kind of like a circuit breaker where it says stop, revisit the contract, renegotiate, and you can't do any more expenditures until you kind of amend it, right? So there are circuit breakers and controls. It's just the nature of how supply chain and procurement works that maybe they just were not versed on. And so as they learn and as that becomes visible, they update. They found instead of $1 trillion, they find like 800 billion. I don't care. Sounds good to me. Let's keep it going, right?
With Russia and Ukraine, alongside Secretary Rubio and Secretary Bessent, General Keith Kellogg, he's also working very hard to secure a peace deal in the Middle East as well. So God bless him, and he's working alongside the president every single day. Sure.
Thanks, Karoline. The president's executive order creating DOGE called for the naming of a DOGE administrator. Who is the DOGE administrator?
So the president tasked Elon Musk to oversee the DOGE effort. There are career officials and there are political appointees who are helping run DOGE on a day-to-day basis. There are also individuals who have onboarded as political appointees at every agency across the board to work alongside President Trump's cabinet to find and identify waste, fraud, and abuse. And they are working on that effort every day.
So is Elon
Reagan.
Musk the administrator?
Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two for you today, one on the border wall and one on the DHS investigation.
Sure.
First on the border wall. Border wall construction has restarted in Texas and California under contracts awarded under Trump's first term. Is the president looking to secure new contracts, and how is he defining success in terms of border wall construction this administration?
The border wall is a signature promise of President Trump's campaign. He talked about it way back in 2015 and 2016, and people laughed at him for bringing up this idea. It's proven to be not only an idea that he delivered on in his first term and continues to deliver on in his second term, but it's also proven to be highly effective. In fact, we know where there were parts of President Trump's border wall built and standing under the previous administration, illegal border crossings dropped 87% where there was a border wall. So the wall is an incredible deterrent factor for illegal migrant caravans. The president is committed to the continuation of the construction of the wall. And, you know, the previous administration actually sold off the resources that the Trump administration secured to build the wall. And that's an egregious misuse of the American taxpayers' money. They just let those resources rot on the southern border. They actually sold them for pennies on the dollar. So this administration, DHS and ICE and Customs and Border Patrol and Tom Homan and all of the great people you know who are working on this effort are committed to continuing the construction of President Trump's border wall.
DHS investigation into people who might be leaking within the administration. Will the White House release the names of the individuals that DHS Secretary Noem said were caught leaking details of the ICE raid? And can you share how many leakers have been caught so far and what agency they were a part of?
I would defer you to DHS on the leakers that they have identified, but I know the president and this White House commend Secretary Noem for launching an internal investigation to identify those leakers because it's unacceptable for career bureaucrats who are standing in the way of the will of the American people and enacting President Trump's agenda. If they don't want to adhere to the will of the 77 million Americans who reelected President Trump, then they should go find another job. And if they continue to leak information, especially information that is critical to protecting Border Patrol agents and ICE agents who are out there doing jobs that not many people are willing to do, putting their lives on the line to protect our national security, then those individuals absolutely should be fired. And this administration is committed to finding them. Sure.
Caroline, two questions for you. One related to Guantanamo Bay, the other to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I wanted to get your response to some Washington Post reporting of the migrants who stayed over at Guantanamo Bay for the last 2 weeks. They told the Post they were rarely let outside. They were shackled and placed in what they described as cages and alleged that they were not treated as human beings. Does the White House have any response to those conditions?
At Guantanamo Bay? It's a promise the president campaigned on, that if you invade our nation's borders, if you break our country's laws, and if then you further commit heinous, brutal crimes in the interior of our country, like raping and murdering innocent, law-abiding women and girls, and committing heinous acts of violence, then you are going to be deported from this country, and you may be held at Guantanamo Bay. These are criminals we are talking about. Don't forget that. Sure.
So U.S. consumer confidence fell this month, the most since August of 2021. What is your message for Americans who are concerned about the impact of things such as tariffs on prices?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for that question. It's obviously an important one.
Hey, I mean, on the question about term limits, it was something that was put in place after Roosevelt, the second Roosevelt presidency. I mean, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt, not Theodore. Just, you know, the precedent had been set of 2 terms. Roosevelt was the only one that went an additional term, but they thought later on that was not a good idea to, you know, have perpetual power in existence like that. And so the idea of change and always having a checkpoint with, this is my interpretation, checkpoint with the people, having fresh ideas coming in from an executive standpoint, that mattered more. What I would like to see is term limits for Congress. That's where we have a really big gap, I think. That's
The
like
president
super big
campaigned
gap.
on reigniting the Trump economy and fixing the mess that was created by the previous administration. We know they created an economic and an inflation nightmare for the American people, and I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you like my predecessor did about the state of our economy. We understand there are...
Whoa, did she just say that? I mean, I got it earmarked this time. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here and lie to you like my predecessor about the state of the economy. Let me just back that up just a little bit. Let's just get.
Consumer
Okay, there we go.
confidence fell
That was
this
crazy.
month the most since August of 2021. What is your message for Americans who are concerned about the impact of things such as tariffs on prices?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for that question. It's obviously an important one. The president campaigned on reigniting the Trump economy and fixing the mess that was created by the previous administration. We know they created an economic and an inflation nightmare for the American people, and I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you like my predecessor did about the state of our economy. We understand there are people that are hurting, and this administration is wholeheartedly committed to ensuring that those individuals see relief and price reductions and tax cuts and in less regulations that are burdensome on their household and their businesses. And the president and this entire administration are focused on that every day. I can go through the very long list of economic actions this president has taken. I know you work for Bloomberg, so I'm sure you're well aware of them, but I can assure the American people that the president is very much focused on bringing down the cost of living crisis in this country that was created by the previous administration.
Just have a quick follow-up. Is the president planning on whipping any votes for support for the House budget vote? And if so, to whom is he making calls?
I'm not aware of any calls that he has made. I did talk to the president about his position on this just before coming down here, and he said that he's made it very clear to the Hill what his priorities for a budget are. He's said it to the Speaker of the House. He said it to Leader Thune. The Senate and the House know what President Trump wants and know what the American people want. And so he expects Congress to get it done. He's looking at the proposal from the House. He will also be looking at the proposal that I believe the Senate is drafting up as well. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. I have two questions. Does the United States, I'm sorry,
Well, why don't you identify your question and I'll come back to you. Sure, go ahead.
So, what guarantee that Israel will withdraw from Lebanon soil after 2 weeks, as the ceasefire terms indicates?
I'm not sure about the guarantee that you're referring to. I can tell you that this administration remains very much engaged. We know the deadline for the Phase 1 ceasefire is imminent. So Steve Woodcock, whom I mentioned earlier, and the president's administration and his team and the president himself remain very much engaged. We want to see the ceasefire continue, and the president has made it very clear he wants to see all of the hostages who have been held in captivity in Gaza returned home. Jeff.
Carolyn, I was wondering if, is Elon Musk going to attend the president's first cabinet meeting tomorrow?
He is, as a matter of fact. I spoke to the president about that before coming down here as well. And Elon, considering he is working alongside the president and our cabinet secretaries, this entire administration will be in attendance tomorrow just to talk about DOGE's efforts and how all of the cabinet secretaries are identifying waste, fraud, and abuse at their respective agencies. We look forward to the meeting tomorrow, and I think you'll be hearing from the president and his cabinet where they're on campus tomorrow. I hope you guys are excited.
So some of those cabinet members were caught off guard by the email from
Nobody
Saturday.
was caught off guard.
A few departments said they were caught off guard. The FBI was, the DOJ was.
Did anonymous sources say that, or did the cabinet secretary say that?
The cabinet secretaries and others have said that they were not aware that this was happening. So I'm wondering, will there be a give and take tomorrow at the cabinet meeting? Is Elon Musk or the president open to any type of dialogue about who is actually in charge of the chain of command of these workers?
I would reject the premise of your question, Jeff. The cabinet secretaries have not said that. I know anonymous sources, probably career bureaucrats, have leaked that to many of you in this room. But as I said at the beginning of this press conference, everybody is working as one team, and the president respects the decisions of his cabinet secretaries to tell his staff, their staff, not to respond to that email because they did so out of interests of national security, and they don't want to obviously risk confidential information. It's pretty common sense. Dasha.
Musk has obviously been doing a lot of work. He's been working every day, and a lot of the time weekends. He is designated as a special government employee, which means that he can only work 130 days per year. Is the White House expecting him to limit his work to 130 days, or are you going to work around those rules? Do you want to see him extend beyond the 130
So
days?
today is February 25th, so I think we've been here.
Hey, MD. Very true. He has told that very painful story before. That was a very big component of it. And it was also the same thing as Bill Maher has experienced, that all of a sudden the views he's held his entire life have somehow landed him as a conservative, whereas he's been a moderate for his whole life. In all honesty, the liberals, true liberals, classical liberals, are all on the Republican Party side of things from a spectrum standpoint. Things have blown past what was classical liberalism. I don't even know what to call what the Democrats have become. It's not liberalism at all. Liberalism has very close ties to libertarianism, and it's just, you know, you just look up classical liberalism and you'll see the connection points. So yeah, it's definitely true there, MD.
About 35 days, roughly. So ask me in another 100 days. Daniel.
Karoline, thank you. You opened up with the major announcement from Apple, $500 billion, 20,000 jobs, doubling its advanced manufacturing fund.
Yeah.
What
This is
does that
Daniel.
signal?
Who's his
That a
entourage?
global brand would make what it called its largest ever spend commitment.
I gotta get
just a month into President Trump's second term. What does that signal about his economic vision for the country?
President Trump is a deal maker, and he has restored confidence in business leaders around this entire world. Apple is one of the largest companies on the face of the planet. They employ hundreds of thousands of Americans, but the president wants to see more Americans employed, more investments here in the United States of America. And this is another fulfillment of the president's campaign promises. I recall President Trump at his rallies on the campaign telling the world that if and when I am elected, America is going to be back, and we want your investments to be driven onshore. We want you to hire American workers, and you will have the lowest regulatory burden, the lowest tax cuts, and the president has already proven he's committed to slashing regulation. He's counting on Congress to implement those tax cuts. And so people are encouraged by the president's, again, as Tim Cook called it, they're bullish about American innovation because of the leadership of this president. And it's a stark contrast to the leadership of the previous administration, Joe Biden, who I don't think spent any time trying to recruit any investments or jobs here at home. Mary.
We're hearing from some Republicans who are voicing concerns about how these cuts are being carried out. Congressman McCormick, a Republican from Georgia, tells us he's worried it's too rapid for real people to adapt to. And he says he's concerned that it could come off as discompassionate, in his words, that it could risk undercutting the strong message that he feels you're trying to send about the need to cut government waste.
Well, I think that that was one comment from one senator, and I think, as I cited in my opening remarks in the poll, the most important people are the American people, and 77% of Americans at home support a full investigation into the waste, fraud, and abuse that the federal government has been spending their tax dollars on. So that's the people the president cares about most, and that's why we're fulfilling this pledge. And again, it should come as no secret to anybody. The president campaigned on doing this.
The president yesterday said if you don't respond to this email, you will be fired or semi-fired. What does he mean by that?
Again, I've been asked to answer this question 3 times now. It is semi-fired, but it's in the memo. The president again has entrusted his cabinet secretaries to oversee their workforce. That's why he nominated them to be cabinet secretaries, and so federal workers can be directed to their agency leadership.
Sure. Great, thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about a federal judge yesterday was saying that they didn't know who the DOGE administrator was and was asking the lawyer for the administration who it was, and the lawyer responded, "I don't know the answer to that. Can you tell us who the administrator of DOGE is?"
Again, I've been asked and answered this question. Elon Musk is overseeing DOGE. No, Elon Musk is a special government employee, which I've also been asked and have answered that question as well. There are career officials at DOGE. There are political appointees at DOGE. I'm not going to reveal the name of that individual from this podium. I'm happy to follow up and provide that to you. But we've been incredibly transparent about the way that DOGE is working. John.
The Republican budget.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Since your last briefing, there have been some personnel moves that have been announced by the president, and I wanted to ask you about them. One was the president replacing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown Jr. What was the reason for the president naming a replacement for General Brown? And then I'll follow up with another personnel announcement that's been made over the last few days.
He thinks he's doing a bad job. And it's time for a shakeup at the Pentagon. They failed 7 audits in a row. The trust in our United States military amongst the war fighters is low. The president is shaking up the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, of course, with Secretary Hegseth leading, and he has the right to do that. It's actually quite common from administration to do such a thing.
The president, when he swore him in as the Chief of Staff for the Air Force, called him a great man and a great gentleman. Does he distance himself from the remarks that he made back in August of 2020?
I think replacing him speaks for itself. James.
There's one other one, if I'm sorry. Thank you. On the FBI, the president also announced a new deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino. From what has been reported, and maybe this is not accurate reporting, you can tell me, the FBI director, Kash Patel, informed Republican senators that it would be an individual named as the deputy who was a special agent currently at the FBI, and of course Mr. Bongino is not. Well, what was the reason for naming Mr. Bongino to this position, and was Mr. Patel not correct in making that assurance to those senators?
I'm not sure if anybody in this room has listened to Mr. Bongino when he talks about the past corruption at the FBI, when he talks about his experience serving for the United States Secret Service. This is a man who loves his country and who has honorably served our country in ways that many people have not. He understands the depth of the corruption at these institutions, which the American people re-elected President Trump to shake up. And I think it's quite despicable to see many networks in this room who have had chyrons on their television screens labeling Mr. Bongino as a far-right podcaster. He is not. He is a former law enforcement agent. He is a former Secret Service agent who put his life on the line to protect this country, and that is why the President of the United States has entrusted him for this important role. He's also an outsider to this Washington swamp, and we often see that when outsiders are appointed to such coveted positions, a lot of people in this city get very, very nervous, and they should be, because Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Attorney General Bondi are focused on rooting out the corruption at these agencies and ending the weaponization of government once and for all. I'd like to end with something. As you all know, you know what, James? I'm feeling generous. Go ahead.
I will take it. Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
I wanted to ask.
Don't make me regret this.
I wanted to ask about the Macron visit and the Russia-Ukraine talks in general.
Sure.
It's pretty clear to my eye that President Macron was performing a kind of delicate dance, lavishing praise on the president while seeking in his own remarks to try to bind President Trump to positions and even specific language that the president has not committed to heretofore. One of the most bracing comments from President Macron was when he said that the deal that President Trump is negotiating with the Russians must not be, quote, a surrender for Ukraine. All of the public points that we have heard from President Trump, from Secretary Hegseth, and from other administration officials talking about these negotiations have averred to, quite openly, to concessions from the Ukrainians that will have to be made. The minerals deal, the abandonment of their NATO ambitions, and other elements. So far, we have not heard any administration official suggest a single concession that the Russians should be prepared to make. And so I wonder if you could assure us at a minimum, that this negotiation process will not be as one-sided as the Europeans seem to think it is, that in fact, President Putin will also be made to engage in some concessions to reach this deal.
Well, I think the president knows how to make a deal better than anyone who has ever assumed the office of the American presidency. And in order to make a deal, you have to bring both sides to the table. And typically when you make a good deal, both sides leave that table a little bit unhappy. I'm not going to outline the concessions that the president and his team are engaged in discussing. These are obviously ongoing negotiations, and it would be unwise of me to impede them from this podium. But the president has made significant improvements in ending this conflict. He is committed to seeing an end to the war. He wants to see the bloodshed and the killing stopped. He wants to stop seeing young men being killed and slaughtered. This has been going on for far too long. The president inherited this mess because of the incompetence of the previous administration, and he's committed to fixing it. And he's made, some of those concessions clear, but I'm not going to get ahead of him on additional ones. But he is wholeheartedly committed to striking a peace deal in Russia and Ukraine, also in the Middle East. Thank you very much, guys. Good to see you. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
All right, so really strong, outstanding performance, and as it was mentioned earlier, she does not even need notes. It's like a little ridiculous. She just goes up there and like talks and does her thing, right? So let's go from that now to President Trump in the Oval Office, and he's going through and again signing executive orders, memorandums, other things, like putting things in motion, getting things done. So you heard her take on a number of Trump's actions. Here's the real deal in progress, right? And he takes questions from reporters directly too. This is almost on a daily basis. Absolutely unprecedented. I mean, you imagine this happening in the past 4 years. It's this is just phenomenal work here.
And they're signing deals that are going to pay a lot of money and create a lot of jobs. And they're coming in largely because they think they feel good about our country, and maybe the tariffs to a certain extent, but they feel very good about the country right now, and so do I. And great things are happening. We're going to be signing some executive orders and some other things, and we'll maybe go down the list. And Will, if you would, please.
First, we have an executive order for your attention. In 2019, during your previous administration, you imposed price transparency requirements on the healthcare industry. This was a significant driver in lowering the costs of healthcare during your first administration. Those requirements were largely reversed by the Biden administration. Now we're reinstating
or terminated, right?
Terminated. We're strengthening them. The idea is to make price transparency a key aspect of healthcare policy in America.
It's one of the biggest things that can happen to reducing cost in healthcare. It takes a little while.
So a couple of comments in the chat here. Grant says, wow, she couldn't get off stage quickly enough. There's commitments. They're on a very tight schedule. Watching each of these briefings, they range from 35 to 45 minutes pretty consistently. Even this chat here that Trump's giving, right? It's going to be like in the 45-ish minute range. Might be a couple minutes less, actually. That's the specific timing. That's the level of detail that they're at, which they know that they need to dedicate time in the day to do these types of things. It's important to the American people to hear from them and to understand what's being put out there, right, through forums like this. But it's all, it's all scheduled because they have so many commitments. They're trying to get so many things done. She can't sit there for 2 hours straight and just answer questions from the press. Because at some point, they're just going to start pulling things out from the wilderness.
But Biden ended it immediately upon coming in, which was a terrible travesty, in my opinion. And we're going to start it up, and we've actually made it even stronger by a couple of major factors, right? Anybody have any question on price transparency? It allows people to go out and negotiate and price, and you're not allowed to even talk about it when you go into a hospital or see a doctor. And this allows you to go out and talk about it. And it's actually one of the biggest. There's a couple of people that actually going back a long way that feel that are real pros in the industry feel this is the biggest thing you can do for cutting prices. And it certainly is one of them. And it's been unpopular in some circles because people make less money, but it's great for the patient. It's great for the people in our country, okay? It's not so good for It's not so good for pharmaceuticals. It's not so good for the companies that make the drugs. And I guess you could say it probably isn't so great for hospitals. But they say that if you have a great hospital that's really knows what they're doing, it's actually great for a hospital because everybody wants to go there. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Got it, Doug?
Thank you, sir.
Pulitzer Prize. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have for your attention another executive order. Copper is a critical material, and the supply of copper is vital to our national security. In recent years, we've dealt with a significant issue of the dumping of foreign copper into the American market. That significantly impacted the domestic production and manufacture of copper and copper materials. This executive order charges your Secretary of Commerce with starting the process to potentially impose tariffs or other trade barriers to prevent this ongoing dumping of copper and to protect the American manufacture and production of copper.
It will have a big impact. Howard, do you want to say something about that?
Do you mind if I read one of your
please.
truths?
Sure.
So this is a truth that's about to go out. Like our steel and aluminum industries, our great American copper industry has been decimated by global actors attacking our domestic production. To build back our copper industry, I've requested my Secretary of Commerce and USTR to study copper imports and end unfair trade putting Americans out of work. Tariffs will help rebuild back our American copper industry and strengthen our national defense. American industries depend on copper, and they should be made in America. No exemptions, no exceptions. America first creates American jobs and protects our national security. It's time for copper to come home. And if it's all right with you, if I can talk a little bit about the digital services tax, would that be all right?
Go ahead, do that.
So I read another truth. This is sort of so fun to read his words. It can't be any better. So our incredible United States economy and undeniable American spirit has enabled the creation of the greatest technology companies on earth. Our digital economy is bigger than most of the world's countries, and the market cap of even one of our companies exceeds every European country. Instead of empowering their work.
Hey, folks, I see some comments. All they do is lie. How anyone could listen to this fool without immediately coming to the conclusion that he's one of the dumbest people in the world. Drop in the chat, let's double click into that. One more detail, like what is he not being forthcoming about? Or better yet, call in. Link is in the pinned chat on YouTube. You can check out my bio. I'll tell you what, I'll drop it in another chat as well. But share your thoughts.
Creating
Let us know what you're thinking
opportunities.
here. A little more
Foreign
detail.
governments have instead tried to tax, fine, and hinder Americans' technology companies. Both friend and foe have been treating American tech companies harshly as if our companies are their piggy bank. This will now end. It is my objective to level the playing field and end these attacks. We are putting these countries on notice to end their unfair treatment of American companies, large and small. Our companies are the greatest investors in the world. So our tech companies are the greatest investors in the world, and their investments will go only to where American companies are treated fairly. Our ingenuity, grit, drive, and perseverance have built America. If these countries want to participate in the AI industrial revolution, it's time to choose sides with America, not against us. And we signed that on Friday, sir.
Okay, very big deal, right?
Huge.
There's a balance. I see a comment in here. U.S. does not even have free health care for all. It's so backwards. There's a balance, right? A lot of doctors in Canada are fleeing to Australia because they get to get decent salaries out there, whereas the Canadian system, everything's fixed. Their prices are fixed. so forth. Not as much incentive for them. So types of things like that are causing real shortages out there. And quality is not often talked about.
All right, and that's a very big one that Howard just read, but they're both big. They're all big. We're only doing big ones. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
What has he done that's aligned with Project 2025 that's so horrendous? He was not. Agenda 47 was his deal, that he had his own little think tank work and come up with, and he approved. He had Agenda 47 that he's continuing to execute on now. They got to bring those people together overall in the party, right, and maybe moderate more. But I don't see that part that you're talking about.
Mr. President, is that the culmination of ongoing conversations that you've had with your counterparts, this particular executive order?
Which one, last or?
The one at the
No, the digital tax is taking place all over Europe. They're taxing us, and they're doing other things. They're suing all our companies. And if that's going to happen, we want to be the ones that sue, not them. And they use it almost as a form of running European countries, and the EU in particular has been very violent in its lawsuits against our companies, and frankly, very violent and very bad to our airlines. I've gotten calls from the heads of airlines saying they stop in Europe and they're getting charged all sorts of taxes that they never even heard of. They stop and they're getting fined and charged, and they do it only with American companies. They're not doing it to other countries, so we're stopping it. And we have another thing, we have another step to go, and if they don't shape up, as an example, Apple has had to pay like $17 billion in a lawsuit that no.
Yeah, I appreciate the side gig offer. Should continue doing that. Toronto Dump says tax the rich. Viva la revolution. I'm not saying it properly. Sorry about that. What's the right amount to tax, and who's rich? Because here's the dilemma, right? There's 1,000 billionaire families. Just getting an even number here, but it's about 1,000 billionaire families in the United States. Trump is one of them. Elon's another. If we took all of their assets, every single penny of everything that they owned, cash, all assets, and we combine that all from all the billionaires, it would not run the government for more than 6 months. I mean, it's something pretty crazy. And yet you think, folks are proposing Robin Hood economics here, where you take from whomever is defined as wealthy and you give to others. Long term, what happens when you run out of other people's money? I mean, that's the old adage, but in this case, it's a serious one. What do you do when you run out of other people's money and you're stuck? So that's not necessarily the solution to target one socioeconomic class. To me, the answer is more to address the system that's not allowing for the middle class to flourish, allowing for the middle class to develop as it has over the years. Something's broken in that system, and Joe Biden just going ahead and dropping a bunch of printed cash into that broken system, it just favored those that were holding assets for longer periods of time.
Worth anything. And I won't get into the judge or the decision or how the decision was arrived, but I'm pretty good at this stuff, and I think it's disgraceful. And Google's being sued, Facebook's being sued, and many others are being sued by their...
And Ming, the comment here, he told you he would be a president of peace, and now he has plans for Canada, Greenland, Gaza, and Panama. None of those are plans that we've heard of to date are, not peaceful. I don't understand what the fuss is over that. Australia has free healthcare for all. Okay, that's nice. I hope one day we can achieve a similar outcome. We pay the most for the least. No, American healthcare has gotten out of hand, but I believe, oh, let's put this up on the screen here. But I believe RFK and his administration balance the power of pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, I hope so. I genuinely hope so. Because it's just pretty bad at the moment. Let's see. There we go. We'll get another comment. This is Sam Malamed. All wealth is created by workers. All power to workers. You know, the collectivism stuff sounds great until somebody has to get things done and make a decision. What do you do at that point as things start to fall apart? So much has to be perfect and, you know, work properly for that full system to work out as intended. Sounds like a really bad case of greed in the wrong direction, says Lucifer. Yeah, talking about the power to all workers. Let's ignore the fact that a man who lied, let me get this up there. A man who lied about the election. Yes, Mark, very true. Socialism is not working everywhere. It's not working everywhere.
So-called government,
right, let's
we
get
call
back
it a
to it,
government, EU, and they don't treat us right. They don't treat us right as a country. So we're going to protect our companies. We have to protect our companies. So we're not going to have any companies left anymore. I also want to thank Apple, though, for announcing they're going to invest $500 billion in our country. That's the biggest investment anybody's probably made to this date. And they're going to do it very quickly, and that's because of tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and they feel very strongly about the country. Now, they wouldn't have done it without us. Without the Trump administration, they wouldn't have done it. But they feel very strongly about the direction of the country. The polls have shown that, too. The polls are coming out showing direction of the company is of the country is the best they've ever seen, actually. Best they've ever seen. So I just want to thank Tim Cook and Apple for the confidence. $500 billion. That's the biggest investment anyone has made in a short period of time.
Mr. President, have you spoken today with the House Republican holdouts who said they would not be supporting the budget resolution?
Well, I'm not involved in that. They know what I want, and the Senate knows what I want, too. And the Senate's got a bill that's very strong, having to do with the taxes, because the taxes is what's bringing all these companies in. So, and without it, by the way, you'd have to double your own taxes. Everybody would be doubled up, and you'd have the biggest tax increase ever. So the House has a bill and the Senate has a bill, and I'm looking at them both, and I'll make decisions. But I don't know where they are in the vote. I know the Senate's doing very well, and the House is doing very well, but each one of them has things that I like. So we'll see if we can come together.
Mr. President, can you clarify, hopefully once and for all, what your expectations are with this email to federal employees? What are you going to use that information for? And do you see it as voluntary, like OPM has said, or mandatory?
Yeah, well, it's somewhat voluntary, but it's also if you don't answer.
A couple stats. So Toronto dump, good points. Housing and rent is out of control. Healthcare costs out of control. What's the solution then? What DOGE is doing right now, let's eliminate all the waste, fraud, so forth. Pull as much money out of the system as possible that's not going towards benefiting individuals, and then reallocate it then at that point. I mean, I think that's the approach that's being taken. I think it's going to pay dividends for us long term. On that rent item, Gen Z went for Trump in a landslide, 20 points or what have you. 71% of them, according to a recent Redfin survey, cannot afford rent on a month-to-month basis. Like they have to sell their property or borrow money from friends or family in order to make ends meet.
I guess you fired. What it really what it is do people exist? We have this massive government with millions of people, and nobody knows who's working for the government, who's not. So what they're doing is they're sending out a letter to everybody, and they're saying, what were the things you did last week? I guess they ask for 5. And if people are working, it's easy. I could tell you 5 things I did last week. I could tell you 5 things I did 6 weeks ago, right? If they're there and they're working, they're able to say they did 5 things during work.
Creeper, is this the Cholo Fit creeper? I don't know.
Further obligation. If they're not,
Donnie just gave more tax cuts for the rich. Calls them here. So, there's these talking points that are point out there, but you got to look at the tax code. You got to look at a scenario, because Donald Trump's tax cut disproportionately benefited the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. They benefited the most because their taxes were almost eliminated. So if you look at things now, say there's a family of 4, earns $30,000 a year, the standard deduction is almost $30,000. Before Trump tax cuts, the standard deduction, 12, 13 grand. So they had just over half of their income still subject to some kind of taxation. Now that's 0. None of it's subject to taxation, at least from a federal level, right? And so a lot of it came along with that standard deduction. So when they look at the interest rates, or excuse me, the tax rates, and they've, pulled them back across the spectrum, and they point to, hey, somebody who has $1 billion, well, 1% of $1 billion is like a lot of money. They shouldn't get it back, and so forth, right? But you got to stick with those percentages, because the lowest, the folks that are at the, 4th quartile, at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, effectively had a 100% reduction in taxes. And I didn't even talk about the credits that they get now, because before Trump, it was $1,000 child tax credit. He made it $2,000. And so that family of 4, they get $4,000 of child tax credit. But that's in addition to all kinds of other earned income credits and so forth. So at the very bottom, that family making $30,000 a year all of a sudden has that full income at their disposal. And I'm just assuming there's no state income tax. I'm sure there's more nuance to it, but it unlocked a lot of money for them, to where if you undo that, they immediately lose $2,000 for those 2 kids a year from child tax credit. And they immediately have good portion of their income subject to taxation. I mean, I'd say at least $1,500, $2,000 more of tax liability just sitting on the books for them. And that's not trickle down, because it's directly benefiting folks at the bottom of the ladder. There was no trickle down effect. That tax cut there was targeted for them. And so now it continues over time. Tips, right? There's going to be more that come out. So you look at it and it's like, that's pretty targeted and it's pretty specific, and it had a good, benefit that enabled people.
It could be there's no such person. It could be that the person's no longer working. They're no longer living at that address. They may be moved. Maybe they moved to a different country, or maybe the person doesn't exist. And
yeah, Chevy, Sasha, this is the TDS channel. I don't know how, but tonight it is.
And we save a lot of
I
money
need to change the
by
poll.
doing that. But that's one of the only ways. I think it's a very smart thing. And it says, if you don't answer, essentially, there's a penalty to pay. Like, that's the end of the job.
Musk has said that. The order itself doesn't say that. I think that's part of the confusion. Is he speaking for you when he says...
Yeah, everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility. The old statement, the buck stops here, right? Famous statement. Well, I can say the same thing. The buck stops here. No, we have to find out if people are getting paid and they're not working.
It's comments like this, and I just put up Creeper. Tell me if you're Cholo Fit, because that'd be freaking amazing. But Donnie Loves is poorly educated. There's this general sentiment on the Democrat side that a sentiment of superiority, and it's perpetuated by this idea that any level of education that they have automatically makes their viewpoint vote supersedes anything that may come from a conservative or from a Republican. And that just, it's a continuing derogatory mindset that exists. I don't know why. I think we need to break away from that. It's not really helping anything, because at the end of the day, the purpose of having these types of discussions, and I wish somebody would jump in on the live and just maybe share a thought here, but the purpose is to openly discuss, your thought process. If you don't know something, you don't know something, big deal. But allow other people the time and space to rethink, their own perspectives and their own thoughts that they might have on something. Because without that, just being argumentative, everybody kind of doubles down and locks in. I don't know if you guys noticed Trump dancing in the background here. Dancing in the background there. But otherwise, people dig their heels in, and that's that. There is, and it's not just about convincing him to join your side. There won't be compromise, right? As Karoline was saying in her press briefing, neither side is going to leave happy from the table because they had to compromise, and that is the outcome that we need to go after for progress.
And, they have a problem. Let's say they have another job, and then they write in false statements.
Reaper told me if it's total fit.
If they write in false statements, they may be working for somebody else, but getting paid by the U.S. government, and that would mean that they're not allowed to be doing that. They're not allowed to be working for us and be working for somebody else. We're paying them a lot of money. We're paying them. So we'll see. That solves that problem. Most people aren't willing to say that, we're doing this, and this for the U.S. government, and yet they're at another job, because that's a big problem for them if they do that. So in some cases, they're not writing back. And if they don't write back, they end up eventually losing their job. We give them extensions, but that was something we thought about a long time ago. We give them extensions, but we'll see. We have to make sure, number one, that we have people, number two, that they're working, and number two, they're working for us, not for another company.
Is it true that President Zelensky is coming on Friday to meet with you, and is the mineral deal sorted out?
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy. And it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal. It could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting. A war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that? It didn't happen for 4 years. Would have never happened. And nevertheless, this guy went into this situation and he spent money like nobody's ever seen. $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion. Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan. And we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion, nobody really knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that, but it means probably more than that. So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like very few people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Mr. President, yesterday with Emmanuel Macron, you said you had spoken to Putin about the idea of peacekeepers in Ukraine, that Putin was fine with it. The Kremlin, I guess, has said that that's actually unacceptable to them. What's real here?
That's not what I was told, but you're going to need some form of peacekeeping, so something will be done that's going to be satisfactory to everybody. We need peacekeeping too.
Any situation
it's actually something I did discuss, but a form of peacekeeping that's acceptable to everybody. Ultimately, we'll be able to agree on something, I'm sure.
With Ukraine and this mineral deal, what does Ukraine get in return, Mr. President?
$350 billion and lots of equipment, and military equipment, and the right to fight on, and originally the right to fight. Look, Ukraine, I will say they're very brave and they're good soldiers, but without the United States and its money and its military equipment, this war would have been over in a very short period of time. In fact, I was the one that gave the javelins. You remember the famous javelins? That was me. That wasn't Obama. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And they wiped out a lot of tanks with those javelins. And the expression was that Obama gave sheets and I gave the javelins. That was a big deal at the time. It wiped out. That was the beginning when people said, wow, that's something. Well, that was American equipment. Without American equipment, this war would have been over very quickly. And American money, too. I mean, a lot of money.
So that war-fighting equipment and the ammunition, that's sustained going forward for Ukraine, and how long is it sustained?
Well, it could go forward for a while, and maybe until we have a deal with Russia. Look, we need to have a deal with Russia, otherwise it's going to continue. But now when Americans put up their money, the taxpayer money, and the president approves it, we're getting our money back in some form. But it could go on for a while, or it could be settled quickly. I think it's going to be settled quickly. I spoke with President Putin. I think he wants to settle it and wants to get on with life. It's horrible. What's happening, horrible. Thousands of soldiers a week are being killed, and others too, but especially on the battlefield. Thousands a week are being killed, and we want that to end. Yeah, Brian?
Yes. Okay. Real quickly. Karoline Leavitt, the press secretary, sent an earthquake through that briefing room earlier today announcing that the WHCA would not have any control over placing media in the seats of the briefing room. Just want to get your thoughts on that. And also on Air Force One, it's trending on X. People are talking about it. Get your thoughts.
Well, we're going to be now calling those shots. As you know, we won that lawsuit right there. See, the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful name. Most people agree. I don't know. It's, you know, AP has been terrible. Look, I think they're radical left. I think they're third-rate reporters. I know the specific young lady that works on the account is terrible. She's a radical left lunatic, as far as I'm concerned. They don't treat us fairly. That's number one. And number two, they had no right to do that. This is the Gulf of America. And if you look at that shoreline, look at that shoreline. Look, from Florida, well, most of it is, it's called America. And vast majority, like big numbers. So I'm just admiring it as I look at it. I'm getting teary-eyed, but I don't want you to say Trump broke down and started crying. No, how beautiful is that? Look at the shoreline. Look at that.
Well,
That's America.
Can I shift our attention to Canada real quick?
Yes, please.
Last week, I spent some time with two government officials from Canada. I was asking them how realistic is it that Canada would be the 51st state.
Yeah.
And they told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada are liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state. They'll have to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us, which is really unfair to us. They make cars that we could make, and they send them back into the United States. They make a lot of things, including the sending of oil and everything. We don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. In fact, we're going to be freeing up, and I've asked Howard Lutnick to get that done with Lee and everybody, Lee Zeldin, environmental. We're freeing up our forests. We're going to be able to take down trees. Right now, you know, we're so restricted environmentally. We're going to be freeing it up with an emergency order. We have an emergency order, and we're going to be freeing up our forests. We have more forests than almost anybody, and great lumber, great trees. We don't need anybody's trees. We don't need trees from Canada or anybody else. In fact, we have to put the slits, as they call them, the area, you know, 50, 60-yard area in between areas of trees. It stops the fires. And frankly, California should have been doing that for years. It's almost getting late. They're going to run out of forests the way they're going. What a shame. And by the way, the water is flowing in California. I hope you people have seen it. But the water is flowing. Do you have a picture of that? I'd hold it up. Do you have a picture of that? Get a picture of it, please. You know, we had a little skirmish in California. I can't believe we had to do that. But we opened up the water in California. The water was flowing into a place called the Pacific Ocean. which for the Pacific Ocean is only a drop. But for us, it's more water that we can use in California. So I'll get you some photographs, but it's a beautiful sight. The water is flowing in California. Beautiful water from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. And it flows down, and instead of being routed out to the Pacific Ocean, and this has been going on for 20 years more in order to take care of a certain species of fish, which wasn't doing very well without water, I can tell you. So that's a big deal. It's like not reported. It's incredible. But California has a lot of water. That's going to take care of farmers. It's going to wetten up the land. And it's going to go all the way down to Los Angeles, where they have curfews on water, where they have all sorts of blocks on water. You can only use so much. We're going to put until just recently, they were going to put a number of gallons per person living in a house in Beverly Hills on water. You're not going to have that problem anymore. Do you have a picture? Let me just see what that looks like. How beautiful is that? Look at that beautiful water flowing. Look at that. That's coming in the dikes and other means of transportation. Isn't that beautiful? Who would believe that? That's all water they could have had. I went to the governor during my first term and I said, why don't you do this? And they said they have an environmental problem with clean water. If this water were there, you wouldn't have had those fires. You had sprinklers. They make people put sprinklers in the ceiling of a home, and they had no water in them. With this, they would have had a lot of water in them. They would have all been full. That would have had you would have had a whole different deal down there. You probably wouldn't have had a fire, but if it was, it would have been small, would have been put out. You had the fire hydrants not working in California. So it's a beautiful site. These are canals that were built. These were all built. And you saw them for years. They were empty, concrete. They call them the V-shapes or the half pipes. And they're shaped different forms, but they're shaped, and they rush down through the farm areas where the farmers can take it and down to Los Angeles. And they were sitting empty for years. And now look at that way it looked. It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up.
Mr. President.
I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government and who supported it accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
So the Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops?
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
So, what do you say to people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith?
Excuse me, I've been targeted for 4 years, longer than that. So you don't tell me about targeting. I was the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years, and then 4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, there are approximately 2 million federal employees right now. By the end of your term, what do you expect that number to be? What would you like that number to be?
Well, it'll be lower, but I can't tell you. Everybody knows I ran on downsizing government, but making government better. I ran on tariffs and making our country rich, and that's what's going to do. We're going to be doing something else that's going to be very good. We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. Never been done before or anything like this, but it's something that we're going to be putting out over the next, would you say 2 weeks out? Do you want to
2
say
weeks.
a couple of words about it?
Sure.
Mr. President, are there
Wait a
any
minute.
requirements for that
Hang on a
gold
second.
card? Do you have to invest a certain amount of money in this country in order to qualify for that gold card?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Go
the
ahead.
EB-5 program was really, you lend some money, but it was full of nonsense, make-believe, and fraud, and it was a way to get a green card that was low priced. So the president said, rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card gold. So they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America. The president can give them a green card, and they can invest in America, and we can use that money to reduce our deficit. Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The President of the United States understands that the right answer is, why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America instead?
The gold card, well, millions, but the gold card will bring in with it people that create jobs, very high-level people. I think companies will pay to get people in. For instance, you today graduate from the Wharton School of Finance or Harvard or Stanford or any college, and nobody knows if you can even go to work for a company.
Hey guys, just got back in here. Sorry, I had to take a quick break. But it looks like we got Sam. I'm going to invite Sam up. Give some quick reflections here. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Sam.
All right, I'm listening to your takes, bud, and you got the most lukewarm 1970s supply side economics BS takes of all time. You got 600 people in this chat watching you, all right? And the level of political illiteracy, not even political, economic illiteracy is wild to me, okay? 1,000 billionaires, if you take all their money, you're gonna run. What are you like Margaret Thatcher from Kroger? Your Kroger brand Margaret Thatcher? Like, are you serious with this? This is the political elite of the YouTube live streaming. Okay, we're talking about we're talking about a country here. We're talking about hold on, all right. We're talking about a country here. 60+% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. We're talking about a country here. Hold on. We're talking about a country here where a $500 emergency, forget breaking your arm, that's smacking into a bumper of a Prius, okay, can put people into debt. Okay, medical bankruptcies at an all-time high, and you're sitting here pearl clutching about 1,000 billionaire families. Like, where is your mind at? Okay, the average person in this country is barely making it, right?
Yep.
Okay, and you're giving me supply side, Reaganite argument. I don't know where on the political spectrum
Yeah,
you
I
are,
think
but
your anger is a little misdirected, to be honest.
look, I don't. You seem to be an eternal fence sitter. All right, there's a gridiron on your ass the way you're sitting on the fence. All right, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I'm angry because you got a bunch of people. Okay, to your credit, you've built a community here watching you. All right, and the best you can give them, the best you can dish out, is lukewarm 1980s political takes with a dubstep soundtrack from 2013 in the background. All right.
It's actually from this year, but thanks for the observation. Or it's nice that you noticed the dubstep, though.
Okay, I noticed it, right? And I don't say this to be malicious. Maybe I do say this to be malicious or something, okay? But you know, I used to be a conservative, right? I used to be I used to be a person who used to like lick the heels of every billionaire tweet that came across my feed, right?
Yep.
But then I grew up and I started reading the economic history of this country. And I started understanding classical economics, neoclassical economics, etc. Right? And I'm telling you right now, all right, we need people to be beaming into the minds of young people on YouTube serious, hard thought content, okay, that wakes them up to the economic realities of this country. Okay, that's my piece for now.
Okay. I appreciate that. I still say some of it's a little bit misplaced. The point on billionaires is not to say that let's leave them alone. It's that that's not the solution. We need to do more. That's just focusing on that kind of misses the point. The system's not working. It's set up for the middle lower to not be able to get ahead, to perpetually be in debt, to
Okay,
perpetually be left
in
behind.
your mind, why is that? How did such a structure come about?
A lot of it was the recent inflation.
Uh-huh. And inflation is like a totally new thing that's never happened before.
It hasn't been at this level since what, the 70s, right? 70s, 80s.
Okay, explain to me how 5 years of inflation, let's say, right? And I'm no fan of inflation, okay? But explain to me on a structural, political, economic level, okay? Connect inflation logically, historically, with major structural discrepancies in our economic system.
Major structural. All right, so I'll just tell you what the problem is with inflation, and I'll tell it to you from a real estate standpoint, because 71% of Gen Z can't pay rent month to month. They have to sell stuff, all kinds of. I mean, there's multiple surveys. You cited one. I don't remember exactly what, but you cited some data as well, and there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
So as inflation goes up, asset values are what benefits, right? You print money, throw it into a broken system,
Yeah.
asset values
Okay.
inflate.
Yeah, everyone.
So
Okay,
my area.
I know the definition of inflation. I'm asking for structural causes, right? System-wide causes of the crisis of affordability in this country, which, by the way, has nothing to do with transient inflation that happened within the last 5 years. But if you knew economic history, you would know that real wages for 80% of Americans have not risen since 1979, since Jimmy fucking Carter.
Yeah, we've
Okay,
talked about that many times before in the past.
but that has
A lot of
nothing
this
to
stuff
do with
that's going on with
transient inflation. All right, that has nothing to do with. That has to do with major structural imbalances in our economic system, which force workers, which is the vast majority of people in this chat, right, to accept less pay, right, to accept worse working conditions, right? And despite the average American working producing over 200% more for their employer since 1979, real wages have risen on the order of something like 6%, right? So the answer to the crisis of affordability isn't a little inflation here, a little inflation there. That's a symptom. That's not a cause. Okay. The answer is that since the post-war economy, workers have continuously made less money, had less bargaining power when it came to negotiating with their employers, and have faced the double whammy of deindustrialization, which the capitalist class has forced on them by relocating all of American industry into the global south, where wages are far cheaper. That has nothing to do with one person
Can you clarify
or a
the global
couple.
south?
I'm talking China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia. I'm talking the exploitation of extremely cheap wage labor, which was brought into competition with American wage labor.
And it can't keep
And
up. The labor arbitrage is just overwhelming at that point, right? You
yeah,
can't argue, you
but
can't-
that's been going on. That's been going on since Nixon opened relations with China, and that has nothing. That has nothing to do with inflation. We're talking about structural causes,
So
right? We're talking about
listen,
political economy.
it's not just one action. I don't think anybody you ask on the street or whatever is going to say that the inflation that's happened over the last 5 years has been transient and inconsequential. It's exacerbated everything that has been going on. And these differences, labor arbitrage, so forth, they have gone unaddressed for way too long. I'm with you on all this stuff. I'm totally with you on all this stuff. There was just a comment in the video that referenced, or excuse me, in the chat, that reference, let's just like tax the heck out of the rich, but it's like that's not going to solve anything.
First of all, why? First of all, let's go why. Like, just give me a logical reason why that won't solve. Let's say not anything, but why that won't
What are you
solve.
going to do with the money?
What do you mean? I'm gonna spend it on entitlements and social services that workers deserve, that the working man deserves. And you know, probably because you seem politically informed, that in the post-war economy, we had marginal tax rates on the top income brackets of 90%. Okay, and that period of American history, the 1950s to the early 1960s, is commonly remembered by both Democrats and Republicans as the most prosperous time in our history. And that is a time when the top marginal tax rate was 90 fucking percent.
And
So don't
oil
tell
and gas
me what are you
exploration
gonna
and
do? What are
production
you gonna do
massively
with the
increased
money?
during that
We
time
have
because
we
all
have
investment
corporate tax,
tax
we have
free.
dirt cheap corporate tax rates. The average American person, the average American worker pays more in taxes than Jeff fucking Bezos. Okay. And the reason is because Jeff Bezos doesn't have an income. He borrows against his assets. He uses his stocks as collateral. Okay. And don't lecture me about what are we gonna do with the money. We give billions of dollars
But
in
is
agribusiness subsidies, in defense
that Robin
subsidies.
Hood model something that's sustainable though?
It's not the Robin Hood model, okay? All wealth is created by labor. Okay? If you were the boss of a factory, okay, the YouTube political factory that produced YouTube political widgets, whatever the fuck, I don't care, right? And you decided to stay in at home one day. Let's fuck a day. Let's say a week, okay? You decided, hey, I'm gonna stay at home. I'm not gonna show up to the factory floor. Okay, I'm gonna let my managers oversee the workers. My employees in general are going to be doing the daily duties that are required at the YouTube political factory. Okay, what would happen to that factory if you, the sole shareholder, did not come to work for a week? What would happen?
You're saying I'm the owner. I'm just making sure I'm
Yeah,
following.
you're the owner. You're the owner. And let's say, hey, you might work a very hard day, but let's say you don't show up.
Business as usual.
Yeah, business as usual. Now, what would happen? If 400 of your employees, right, let's say which is half or maybe 25% of your workforce, right, decided not to show up? What would happen?
There would be an interruption of business, for sure.
There would be an interruption of business, right? That's what a sit-down strike is, by the way.
So
That's a millimeter away from we don't need bosses at all.
Well,
right?
hang on a second. You're going a little bit too far with it. Then, so you're entering into the idea that collectivism is the way that we need to go long term.
Who said anything about collectivism? I'm not. Look,
Did I hear you say we don't need
maybe
bosses at all?
maybe I'm a wild Marxist who has like a red flag up his ass. Sure, whatever. But even the most staunch capitalist understands the basic principle that he is not needed on the factory floor and that all wealth, and by the way, I want to point out you're a worker. You have no reason materially to be against what I'm saying, except, I don't know, to sit on the fence or something, right? All everything around you, the computer in front of you, the mic you're speaking into, right? The microwave in your kitchen, the toilet you just pissed in, that was all created by labor. Okay? What a boss does is he sits on his factory floor or his office building and he collects the vast majority of the fruits of the labor of the workers. Okay? And that's the true tax, by the way. All right. Now, most Americans are not going to believe what I'm saying and probably going to call me a
Yeah,
commie.
I'll just
Okay.
totally continue, but I think this is where you're going to start losing people.
I'm totally prepared for that. Okay. But you don't have to believe in the labor theory of value or whatever, right? To agree with me. All you have to know is that, or all you have to recognize is that the labor, the worker, which is the vast majority of people in this country, okay? The hourly wage worker is the backbone of all social activity in this country. And they deserve to enjoy the fruits of their labor. That means they deserve Medicare. They deserve Medicaid. They deserve paid time off. They deserve to have a family. They deserve to be able to afford a home. And that means getting people like BlackRock, Blackstone, people like Larry Fink out of local real estate markets, okay? It means so much more than that. And a lot of that can be accomplished by taking a piece of the pie that workers make for their bosses and giving it back to them in the form of classic tax and spend liberalism, which, by the way, we have done up until the neoliberal period or the neoconservative period, whatever you want to call it, starting with Jimmy Carter in 1979.
Okay.
Okay.
When the
So
printed
logically
press
it's feasible.
started,
Logically it's feasible.
yeah.
Historically it was done. Okay. So what ground do you have to stand on except stupid Thatcherite arguments, you know, which are kind of vague, ambiguous callbacks to just the same 1980s stupid conservative talking points, right? That every person, you know, who watches Newsmax or Fox just parrots to their grandkids every 5 seconds. Like, do you have anything else in your arsenal?
I think you're making a lot of assumptions there. Newsmax.
Whether or not you're conservative is the point. I'm saying you're saying those things. The phrases coming out of your
The one
mouth
thing that you've
are
mentioned
identical.
that you took exception with was when I said you're not solving a problem by taking all the billionaires' monies away.
I didn't even say take all of it. I just said take a fat
I said
chunk.
take all of it, and so you took exception with that.
I
that
wouldn't.
no,
I
we
wouldn't have
should
a
be
problem
taxing.
with that either. In my mind, it's really not their money anyway.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. Okay. So, I mean, this is where you're really losing people, right? So, like, I work hard. Like, I've earned everything I've got.
Okay. Do you have employees?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So you're taking a chunk of their pie.
There you go, right? It's like, man, like, I built something. I've grown something. I've done something.
Nobody's denying that. Hold up. Nobody is denying that.
And
Okay.
you know, I treat people extremely well. I develop people. I
Hey,
mentor people. I do a good job.
nobody
I look out
is
for them
denying that.
constantly, right? I check on their well-being.
You're moralizing. Now you're losing me. You're moralizing. We're off the rails here. We're on a logical, historical rate. I don't need to know how nice you are to your workers. Okay, I'm sure you're a very nice person. I'm sure you have a good heart. Okay, the point of economics, right, is to get to the heart of the matter. Meaning, it doesn't matter what type of person you are, whether you're nice or you're not. What is the material basis of your existence? Okay, what is the material basis of how you make a living? That's what I'm getting at.
Can you
Okay.
explain that a little bit more? I'm not sure everyone's going to catch on to that.
Okay, I'll explain it like this, all right? And you don't have to agree with this, okay? You don't have to agree with this to be like Bernie
I'm trying to
Sanders
get new
wouldn't
ideas
agree
on
with
it.
what I'm saying.
Or
Okay.
alternate ideas, I should say. Go ahead.
Okay. So I believe in something called the labor theory of value. Okay. You do not have to agree with this, okay, in order to come to my conclusions, but this is one way to get there. All right. The labor theory of value states that all value, right? We can think of it as a dollar amount, is created by the work of man. Okay, I'll give you a very simple example with McDonald's. Okay, a worker shows up to, let's say you show to McDonald's, you're the fry cook, right? What do you do all day? You make burgers. Okay, what state do you live in?
I'm in Texas.
Okay, so you're looking at federal minimum wage, right? 7.25 an hour. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Forget whether that's low or high. Let's just say you make $7 an hour. Okay. You go in. You're a very efficient fry cook. Okay. You make 10 burgers an hour. Okay. So every, I don't know, 6 minutes, right? You make a burger. All right. So you're a great fry cook. Okay. McDonald's Corporation or the franchisee who owns McDonald's, okay, are they gonna take that burger and sell it for $7?
Today, yeah, they might actually.
Okay, but okay, you're in a vacuum. Okay, I'm trying to make a logical point here. Okay.
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
we're looking at okay. So I'm asking, McDonald's pays you $7 an hour. You made 10 burgers, right?
Okay.
Well, let's do even math. Let's say they paid you $10 an hour. Okay. They pay you $10 an hour. You make 10 burgers. Let's say McDonald's just resold the burger at the price that they pay you to make them. How much would be a burger? How much would a burger cost?
Oh, so you're saying dollar a burger, everything evens out?
Well, 10 burgers an hour, right? You make $10 an hour, right? So yeah, dollar burger. Okay. So are they gonna sell the burger at that price? Yes or no?
No, of course not. They got to turn a
Why?
profit.
Why not?
They have overhead. They got to turn a profit.
No, hold on. Let's say you're the only overhead. Okay, you're it.
Oh, okay. So super simplistic. I'm the only.
Yeah, you're it. You're it. Literally, there's no other cost except for you. Okay. Are they gonna take that burger and sell it for the same cost that they pay you to make the burger?
No.
No. Why not?
To make a profit.
Exactly, to make a profit.
Yeah.
Okay. So what they're gonna do, right, is they're gonna pay you less than the value you provided them. And it's not because they're evil or they're not nice or they hate you. It's because they wouldn't be able to survive, right, without doing that. Does that make sense? Right?
Okay.
So the same applies to you, by the way. You, in order to survive as a business, okay, do not pay your employees the value they produce financially, monetarily. You may provide value in other ways, emotional value, whatever, right? We're not talking about that, right? Without paying your workers less than the value that you provide them, you wouldn't turn a profit. You would not survive as a business, okay? And if we take that very simple example and if you just entertain my idea, you'll see where I'm coming from. Okay? Apply this to an economy on a vast scale. And by the way, no business larger than 500 employees is paying their employees even half of the value they provide. Okay? The data is much closer to like 18, 19%. Okay?
That even seems high, to be honest. But yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, that means they're not getting 82% on average of the value they provide to the business.
You know
so
what I
the
mean?
work,
Like Apple and, those kind of things. Astronomical, right?
Yeah, of course. They're making record profits. They're flush with cash. It's so bad that the amount of foreign assets floating around in Europe just for Apple are literally exceeding the legal limits of cash they can keep in reserve at one bank and still be safe, still be insured, okay? And that is the basis of all capitalist economies. Okay. Now, whether there's another system is a whole nother conversation. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I think you can agree, right, that it's not such a radical idea to take a bit of that extra value, right, that the employer gets out of you and give it back to you so you can pay for healthcare, so you can pay for college, so you can buy a house, build a family. And not wait until you're 45 fucking years old. Is that radical? I mean, is that radical? Right? My argument is no. not only on a logical level, as I've demonstrated now, but historically, that's exactly what we did. We took the GI Bill, we took all the great people who fought in World War II, okay, died for this country, right, were wounded for this country, right? And we said, hey, we're gonna tax the wealthy, your employers who already take a fat cut of the value you provide them, and we're gonna give a little bit back to you in the form of low interest rate mortgages, in the form of grants to college, right? So your children can go to college, right? So your children's children can go to, so they can have health care, right? Medicare was only instituted in 1965, right? Like, is that radical? I'm legitimate. Is that radical? Taking a bit of the value you create for society and giving it back to you instead of having it held in the hands of the parasite class.
Characterization of parasite and stuff like that's not going to help with the if you're trying to sway people to that.
You wait. When enough people go bankrupt and enough people are hungry and not able to afford a home, I'm very sure they'll be okay with the characterization of parasite, as many already are.
I can't buy into that.
Well, you can say that, but I'm not hearing any logical rebuttals of what I said.
So if what's the incentive for, because somebody had to kind of create, we'll go back to the hamburger example.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to bring the burgers, patties, lettuce, tomato, pickle, have a little shop.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to pull that all together, do the advertisement. And I know we were keeping the numbers simple just so that the example could be, easily understood. But somebody kind of set up that brick and mortar shop and all the other aspects to it. And they probably invested money that they had labored and saved up to setting that up. But all you're proposing, they don't have any incentive to actually do anything like that, to actually create something like that. The innovation and creative spirit, to me, of just being human is diminished, if not completely eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll answer you in two parts. Number one, right, and this is a very common misconception, right?
Yeah, and I just want you to say that's my reaction. Just
I understand
on the face value, right?
Okay, I understand, and most people would have that same reaction. Okay, because there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what's going on in our economy. Okay, in our economy, 10% of the population owns 80% of all stocks. So if you just take that as a simple barometer, right, to see, okay, who owns the wealth, meaning who owns the businesses, right? Who owns the factories, the shop floors, etc., right? It is literally impossible, right, for even a slight majority of those people to be directly or even indirectly involved with the production process. Okay, we have this picture in our minds that the capitalist or the employer is some individual or group of individuals who is physically organizing, right, the movement of the buns and the ketchup and the tomatoes and the lettuce, right? Maybe that was the picture 150 years ago, right, when you had small scale production. This was before large scale industrial capitalism, right? But that view is like a Disney movie. Okay, in our economy, and this has been the way for at least 100 years, okay, of monopoly capital, where the vast majority of goods and services are provided by inhuman, abstract conglomerates that span multiple continents, right? The vast majority of the production process management, which is what you're describing, is done by workers. We call those people middle managers, okay? Those are not employers. Those are not capitalists. Those are not innovators. Those are exploited workers who, yes, are better paid than the fry cook, but nonetheless workers, right?
They're top quartile, generally speaking.
It doesn't matter how much they make. The point is that they are in the same material position as the fry cook. They just make more. They're compensated for their labor because it took more labor to make them, right? They had to go to college, they had to get an MBA, etc. Right? Okay. So if you can understand that, then it immediately becomes clear that the picture you're painting of the innovator, the entrepreneur, as this, mom and pop, pitchfork, spoon, whatever, like who's directly involved in the production process, it's totally outdated, complete misconception.
Okay, so like in the corporate model, then, right? What you
Yeah,
just
but the
described
corporate
really was-
managers are managers. They're not.
Yeah,
Warren Buffett owns a healthy chunk of Coke. Okay, Warren Buffett owns a healthy. Warren Buffett has not been on a Coke factory floor for 20 fucking years.
Yeah.
Right?
He's in a totally different bucket, right? That's so like let's follow through the example that you gave of,
He
goes
he
to high
represents
school,
the
gets a
vast
degree.
majority of ownership. When we talk about capitalists, we're talking about people like him. You're talking about capitalists who are in the minority here, right? You're talking about mom and pop crap that hasn't been a significant force in this country since J.D.
It's one
Rockefeller
example based on
was
the
born.
the initial definition or description. Let's follow through on the corporate example.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody goes to college, gets an internship, whatever the path is, and they land a job in a corporation. They work their way up. They're a middle manager, right? They too, it was in a different vein. They too had to put labor. They put time.
Of course,
money,
and they should be
right,
compensated. They should be
schooling,
duly
right?
compensated for that. Yeah.
And so they get compensated for it, and they may have employees through the corporation that are reporting to them that they provide direction to and so forth.
Sure.
The scope of what they take on is perhaps larger than those employees that work for them because they have the accountability. If something goes
Okay.
wrong, it's on them, right?
Okay, sure.
So-
There's nothing wrong with the picture you're painting at all right now.
Yeah, so in that case, like with them kind of earning more, even though there's, say they have 10 people, say they have 50, who knows? Them inheriting the outcomes that, their workforce that they watch over, it's a consequence of them putting in effort, time, dedication to
Sure.
achieve that level that they're at. Now, I know that's, it doesn't always work out. There's always, somebody's always somebody's boy or weird network connections. Like, let's assume that's not happening. Somebody actually earned it. But again, what if the system doesn't allow for them to benefit from putting in that effort? What's to incentivize them to...
Hold on. Who said that hard work shouldn't be rewarded? In fact, it is you who's advocating the opposite. I am saying, what I am saying is that it doesn't matter what type of work it is. If a person works, they should be compensated.
Oh, okay. So that's fundamental. So you're saying
Okay.
there's no differentiation on the type of work.
No, I'm not.
Like
okay.
a doctor shouldn't
It's
be
a
paid
lu-
the same as like
I'm a medical student. Okay,
Huh?
I
Yeah.
worked in a county hospital.
Uh-huh.
I am under no illusions that a doctor does the same quality of work as a window washer or as a rocket scientist or as like these are totally different types of work. The point is that it's work, and all I'm saying is that whatever labor a man does or a woman does should not be exploited by a parasitic, and what I don't care if you don't like the term.
So your
it is what it
efforts
is.
are higher value to society.
I'm a
window
socialist.
washer.
Okay, I'm a socialist. I want labor. I want work to receive all.
Like
that
I
it
want more
produces.
folks like you because we're having shortages. I would like more folks like you. And how do we incentivize that if everything is
How about you raise their wages? How about you raise their wages?
Doctors' wages. I'm all for it.
What? Oh, hold on. Now all of a sudden, it's not. We're not talking about, Thatcherite, parroting Thatcherite points anymore. Look, this is always what I come across, right? People don't really understand the fundamental socialist argument, right? And honestly, it's our fault because we got a bunch of blue-haired freaks on our camp who don't know anything, right? And just yell at people because they don't like the moral decisions that, some guy in the White House or some person in Congress make. So whenever I talk to a normal person like you, right, and I try to get across my understanding, which I believe is the traditional understanding of socialism, right? Like it's like almost everybody's a socialist, right? And then what you realize, right, is that it's actually you're talking about you want to incentivize good work, you want people to be compensated for work. I'm literally saying the same thing, but what you don't realize is that you're arguing for a parasitic class to siphon off the lifeblood of the work that you want to be compensated. Right?
So here I got a disconnect I need your help with. So you
Yeah,
were
go.
saying a moment ago that the window washer should be like at the same pay rate as
No, not at all. I wasn't very clear, but what I meant to say is that all sorts of work is different in its intensity and the quality, meaning its work is different in what it is and how hard it is to do, right? That's a fact of life, right? I wouldn't pay a person who, I don't know, does something absolutely easy, right? Like washing dishes or something. Not to say that dishwashers are irrelevant, right? The point is that the intensity of the labor is not the same as, for example, a mechanic working on a car,
Yeah.
right?
Or a doctor, like your medical student, the
Yeah,
prerequisites required to do it
or a doctor.
competently are way different.
But I'll be honest. Sometimes I start to think that even the most downtrodden classes of jobs in our society, like for example, janitors, are so important to the hospital, right? Like if you do the math, and this is just a little tangent, if you do the math, the janitor saves more lives than a doctor. So the janitor disinfects, right, the entire work area, preventing hospital-acquired infections from happening in patients, which kill millions of people, right? A doctor may save a few thousand patients if he's lucky in his entire career, right? So the janitor doesn't get paid less because he's valued less by society. He gets paid less because it costs much less labor to produce him. Anybody can wipe the floor, right? But it costs 10 years plus of labor to produce a doctor. My point is that no, window washers should not, nobody should get paid equal on any abstract principle of equality. Okay.
I'm with you on
Sorry.
that.
Yeah, go ahead. I cut you off.
Oh no, I'm following you. I'm with you on that. Okay, so I don't if there's acknowledgement of somebody's skill, somebody's level of contribution, and even if they are doing the same thing, they can do it at better quality or whatever it might be. That kind of merits a higher level of compensation.
100%.
I think so. We're on par with that then.
Yeah, but
and where you're saying there's a difference
yeah,
is if there's like somebody that's, I'm going to call him an overseer because I don't know how best to reference him.
Just
Maybe
call him a
that's the right word.
capitalist. Call him an employer, capitalist.
Okay, I'm going to say
the
employer.
one you call him the one who makes profit, or something. Okay, if you really want to be nice. Right?
Okay. Well, I'm just going to call him the employer. So, but if there's an employer that gets involved, and it's not like individuals acting as individuals, once there's an employer involved, then that's where you take exception.
Yes, because fundamentally there's a difference between being paid for your work, which is what we call a wage, right? And profit. Okay, profit is based on exploitation of waged labor. And exploitation, here's a very specific word, which means not paying the worker the value they produce, as we discussed with the McDonald's example. And again, I want to get away from moral associations here. Okay. You could be the nicest capital. You could give all your workers Christmas cards, right? You could buy them puppies. I don't care, right? You would not survive as a capitalist if you did not pay your workers less than they provide. And that one phrase, paying your workers less than they provide to you, is literally the source of all conflict, of all political and economic wrangling that happens in this country.
All right, let me ask you a question then. This is interesting. So there's a lot of things to achieve really, really big revolutionary things. Sometimes there's, to me, it requires more than one person to participate and contribute towards a really big goal, right? In the individualistic model that you're proposing, how do those types of big goals get achieved if everybody's acting as individuals and there's not really a hierarchy that's promoted to allow decision making and kind of
No,
vision and
hey,
stuff to come to
I'm not
fruition?
against hierarchy. Here's the thing, right?
No?
Like, so many critiques of socialism are based on the same kind of straw men, right? And again, mostly it's our fault, right? Because we come across as utopian idiots, right? Who are totally disconnected with the reality
Yeah, I'm
of.
trying not to say that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm trying to leave that stuff out of the equation.
But see, I'm honest about it because I'm around these people. And let me tell you, okay, a lot of these socials haven't done their reading. Okay. Any child knows, right, that there needs to be a hierarchy, right? Engels had a simple example, right, of a captain on a boat, right? The boat would sink without the captain. Nobody here is against hierarchy, right? Like, nobody here is against, for example, in my workplace, an attending physician managing residents and them managing medical students, etc. Without that, patients would die. That does not mean that exploitation is necessary, right? I'll give you an example from my workplace. I work at a county hospital, which is a system that does not operate on profit. We get money from the government, right, to treat patients without insurance, right? Okay, so nobody's making a profit because we just get paid for whatever services we provide, and that's it. Nobody's taking, there's no overseer, as you call it, taking a little extra chunk for themselves as profit, right? We do $100 of services, we get paid $100 of services, full stop, right? Okay. In that hospital, which is, by the way, a massive hospital, right? There's not one capitalist. There's not one capitalist, and everyone works according to their role, coordinates work according to their role, and gets the work done. And if you just look outside of our stupid American, like, Overton window minds, you will find this everywhere. The family operates like this, right? Your sports team operates like this. There are hierarchies everywhere in which there's organized, coordinated efforts.
What about outside of like the hospital or healthcare system?
Dude,
company, for example, like we mentioned Apple earlier. How does an innovation like the iPhone come about?
How does okay, well, you've opened up a whole can of worms because the vast majority of quote unquote innovation in the tech sector, like the internet, like microprocessor technology, etc., actually was funded with public tax dollars, which was then sold off to the private sector. Like the internet, for example, which started as a DARPA project to connect computers in the Pentagon, right? That the TCP protocol from that project is still used today as a handshake protocol in our modern privatized internet, right? Like, nobody's denying the importance and the need for innovation, right? But to say that these things, right, cannot exist at a minimal tax and spend little, I'm talking about like
I'm with you.
socialism.
Like there's certain things that, space program did a lot of stuff, right? Communications and so forth way back when. What you're describing with the internet, yes, defense got involved with pulling some of that stuff together. It's the next steps, the next 2 or 3 steps that go beyond that, right?
Look,
how do those things,
if you may clutch your pearls completely at this example, okay, but let's be honest, okay? Even though it didn't win the space race, the Soviet Union, which was the ugliest of experiments with these sorts of concepts, went to space first, right? Put the first man on the moon, right? I mean, there's little things that we don't even know, like LASIK eye surgery was created in the Soviet Union. First open heart surgery done. Like, I mean, there's so many things, and this is not to say that life was somehow better, right? But the point is that you're constricting yourself to one mode of organization in which hierarchy is associated with the exploitation of your fellow man. I'm just not going to get down with that.
Let me ask, I guess, Soviet Union did not have, I guess, the level of equality. There's definitely hierarchy and dictatorship and stuff involved, right?
Of course.
Why did it collapse, though?
That is a whole can of worms, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there weren't economic contradictions and problems in the Soviet economy, because you know what, my own family comes from there.
Yeah.
Okay, my great grandfather fought in the Russian Civil War, right? So I'm not some utopian retard, right, who thinks that there's, you're either in socialism Candyland, right, where everyone is wearing the same thing, riding the same bike, taking the same. I'm not there. I'm also not in the Javier Milei camp, right? Like, the point is that like a gentleman like yourself has a nuanced position, right? But it doesn't matter if you take offenses, but you have taken to heart propagandized views of leftist economics, leftist political economy, and leftist general political traditions, right? And I can tell because I used to say the same thing.
I'm just making sure. You said leftist. You don't mean right?
No, I'm saying that you.
Oh, you mean about socialism is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm following.
Yeah,
I missed that.
but
Go
but
ahead.
I have to go in a second here. But all I'm saying is this, okay? Forget the big picture about socialism that we're outlining here, right? Let's keep our capitalist Hey, let's say I like capitalism, right? Let's say I like our economy in America right now. Can I get a little healthcare, right? Can we get a little education? Like, can we get a little bit of what we give to the boss? Like, is that crazy, right? And once you jettison these insane Reaganite talking points about the problem with socialism is when you run out of everyone else's money and you realize that it was your money to begin with, right? And it was taken from you, literally taken from you, right? Your labor was stolen from you every day you go to work. Once you realize that, you're like, wait a minute, it's not the billionaires' money. The billionaires need me. I don't need the billionaires at all, right? And it's like we used to know this in our country. We used to have sit-down strikes. We used to have mass strikes in
I'm
this
with
country.
you 100% on your sentiment. The how of it, I have different thoughts on. And I know you say you got to go, but like the how of it's where I perhaps differ with you on. But
here's the how.
The outcome of people being in that better state, right, and focusing on wage growth. How we get to that point is something.
I got 3 solutions. Ready? Number 1, tax the wealth of the wealthy. And I don't here just mean billionaires. I mean, when I become a doctor, I'll make 6 figures. Tax my ass. Okay? So, number 1, tax wealth, because that wealth is accumulated on the backs of workers. Give the workers back a piece of the pie in the form of social entitlements, right? And guaranteed services. Okay, number 2, increase labor union participation. Okay, labor union participation is at all-time lows in this country. We had the highest real wages in this country in the mid-1960s when labor union participation was at a record high. Okay, number 3, decrease insane military spending and shift that money into public services that actually better the lives of ordinary fucking people, okay? And stop building F-35 so you can bomb brown people in fucking, East Timor, which is something we literally did under Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon,
Yeah, that
okay?
guy was.
Which,
I don't even know where to begin with that guy. That's a whole
yeah,
other story.
which the average American doesn't even know where to point East Timor. He wouldn't know how to point East Timor out on a map if his life depended on, right? Okay, if we just start with those three extremely basic things, right? I'm telling you, we would improve the quality of life in this country, including the affordability crisis, regardless of transient inflation periods, by a million times. Okay, and you know that to me is so basic, and I understand why people disagree. People call me a commie, socialist, bleed your heart out, lib. I don't care, right? Eventually, when people start literally not being able to feed their families, when people start going bankrupt due to like a hand fracture, right, at a rate that is higher than any other time in our country, my talking points will become like saying the sky is blue, right? Or, the most basic thing you can say. Like it's not even going to become a point of contention, right? And if it doesn't get to the point, then it's just going to keep the working class, the middle class is just going to keep getting hammered until it does get to that point, right?
Yeah.
That's how capitalism functions. It's a war, right? And eventually one side is going to come out on top.
Okay. Well, Sam, I appreciate you dialing in. I hope we have a chance to speak again and maybe kind of drill in on one of the topics that you mentioned a little bit more, but it's been a pleasure. Thanks for dialing in. Anybody else want to call in? More than welcome. I appreciate Sam dialing in very much. Again, we got to get some of these ideas out there because that's what's lacking, right? Is people expressing some thoughts, some different thoughts around things. I didn't agree with everything that he'd mentioned, but I'd have to say I feel like the end results were pretty aligned with, and I think that gets lost a lot of times with folks, is that we want to get to that same end state. So anyway, who is this drunk and what? Drunk and learning? Oh boy, what's going to happen here? All right, I'll give this a shot.
Hello.
Drunk and learning. How are you?
Good, good. How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing all right. You threw me off a little bit with the name there.
Good, good, good.
What's on your mind?
Not a whole lot right now. As stated, how do you feel about DOGE or DOG or however you say it?
The government agency or the crypto coin?
No, yeah, the agency.
Keep going. Keep going.
What are your opinions about it, I guess?
I think it's long overdue, the actions they're taking and the level of scrutiny they're putting things under. There's a lot of waste. I mean, it's kind of what I do. It's my MO. I get put into different roles and so forth, and that's what I kind of start with. It's years and years as organizations have been there for a long time, and I'm not just saying government specifically, but they accumulate things and people just accept it as that's the way things are. And it's nice to see that somebody's challenging that and looking to be a little bit more efficient and try to redeploy those dollars towards something else. I don't know what it's going to get redeployed to, because that's the next question, right? That's up in the air. They're throwing ideas out there.
Yeah.
But I'm all for it at this point.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of curious. I'm very apprehensive about it.
What's got you apprehensive?
It's going too fast.
It is going very fast, isn't it?
It is. I'm used to the fucking I guess the red tape, the bureaucratic red tape it takes,
Yeah.
I feel like the wagon currently is ahead of the fucking donkey. Fuck, dude, I am so fucking drunk. I apologize.
Are you really? I was like, that's all right, man. That's all right. I appreciate you. I appreciate you thinking about this stuff while you are a bit inebriated. Always a good combo. Helps.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, I just like that it's something different, because we've done the same thing over and over again for years, and nothing changes. We get the same, less than ideal or far less than ideal outcomes. The system perpetuates.
I wouldn't say different is wrong.
Mhm.
It's just I don't necessarily agree with the fact that I don't feel like right now we're putting critical thought into what we are cutting or taking the time to appraise it.
Have y'all looked at the DOGE.gov website?
I have a bit, yes.
What do you think? Just the level of detail that they give you there.
They give me a lot of numbers. And
do you want to see more details to
oh yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I guess right now it's easy to say that yeah, we are firing people or hiring people, or well, I guess we're cutting costs, but we're not necessarily detecting fraud, which I feel like the main premise of DOGE was intended for.
I saw it more as an efficiency play, just government's inefficient, and they've started to, I think they're throwing out the term fraud when there's something that maybe they politically don't agree with, in addition to things that are questionable. So a lot more things are getting called that. I wish that wouldn't be thrown around as loosely, because that implies criminal behavior, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they play to the sound bites sometimes, and that might be part of it. I don't know, but some of the stuff is like they politically don't agree with it, and so it's termed in such a way.
Okay, yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I'm definitely against like $200,000 staplers or that kind of shit, you know?
Yeah.
And this is shit that's been going on since fucking I guess forever. Biden made this big thing too. Fuck. I can't remember when it was, but he started cutting a bunch of government agencies. I'm gonna disconnect, dude. I am so fucking drunk.
That's all right. Come back anytime, man. I appreciate you, and thanks for not being crazy. Sometimes the fun names, I don't know what happens. You get all kinds of stuff going on. But anyway,
yeah,
come
no.
back anytime. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Have a good night.
All right, y'all. So I appreciate the call-ins. I'm gonna go. Oh, we do have some more time on this. I'm gonna go ahead and keep this going here with Trump playing. He just showed the map of Gulf of America, if I remember correctly. I think we're just going over that portion of things. But I appreciate the call-ins. It makes me think of topics or things that we can maybe dive into a little bit more detail with. Pull some numbers together and think through it together. It is a little late. Here, let's close out the stuff with Trump here.
Companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card, and for the people that are number one in their class at top schools, I see that as one of the things, but generally speaking, it'll be people with money and people that create jobs, and they won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens, but they'll have to pay if they create jobs in the United States. They'll pay full taxes like everybody else. So you're getting big taxpayers, big job producers, and we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion.
Wow.
And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But it could be great. Maybe it will be fantastic. We have it all worked out from the legal standpoint. It's totally legal to do. Hasn't been done before. It's been done in many different forms. We give them away. Why should we give them away? We shouldn't give them away. And I think it's something very exciting. I think it's potentially just something that we're all very excited about. So it's a gold card. It's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication. It's a road to citizenship for people. And essentially people of wealth or people of great talent, where people of wealth pay for those people of talent to get in. Meaning companies will pay for people to get in and to have long-term status in the country. And I think it's something we're very, very happy about. Would you have anything to say about that?
Well, many other countries, by the way, do this, including, of course, your 51st state does that.
And the money's earmarked for deficit reduction?
It may be earmarked for deficit, but it actually could be more money than that. I mean, if you did 10 million, you'd have $15 trillion left over. But generally, it's going to be paid down debt, yes.
Do you need Congress for this? Do you think you need
No, we don't need Congress, no. Because we're not doing citizenship, we're doing the card. It's a path to citizenship. A very strong path to citizenship, but we're not doing the citizenship. For that, I'd have to get Congress.
And would all countries be eligible for this gold card?
Depends. The countries largely, the people will be vetted very carefully.
Mr. President, in Ukraine, would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future under a peace agreement?
Say it again louder.
Would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future as part
You
of
mean
the
like
peace
security?
agreement? Yeah.
Well, people are going to do it. I think Europe will largely be responsible for that. European countries will be responsible.
But Macron asked for a U.S. backup.
Well, we'll see. I mean, right now we're just in the process of negotiating. We've pretty much negotiated our deal on raw earth and various other things. We'll be looking at that security. You're talking about general security for Ukraine later on. I don't think that's...
I would like to hear a little bit more about, these H-1B programs. The intent was to procure the highest levels of talent and secure them to come to the United States, and there'd be affiliated benefits to that. But I would like, because during the campaign, remember Musk and Vivek and others, they got hit on this one, and Trump kind of corrected it. This cannot be something that's done solely for, labor arbitrage. This has to be to the overall benefit of the United States, because this is a government policy. This is something that, you're working towards growing the economy, growing, the country as a whole, not necessarily growing profits just to kind of trade, take disruptive actions and trade labor from one place to another. I hope that there is some address of that happens. This should not be an encouragement just to continue down that path of labor arbitrage, because again, a lot of companies with the tariffs are more than happy to come back because they'll invest in a hyper-automated facility in the United States, potentially, likely with subsidies. And that will be at an even better margin to produce their products than, labor from a lower-cost geography. Because robots are always more efficient and more cheap than, in the long run, than people. So, and that's just one example, right? If it's manufacturing, there's other intellectual type services and stuff that need to be taken a look at as well. But again, these programs that he's talking about with all these policies and everything, and as we were talking about earlier in terms of wages and so forth, the greatest suppression to wages has been the arbitrage that's unfolded over the past 25, 30 years. And so they need to take a look at that, because that's been, I think, a big driver for the disparity that we see out there. And hopefully these programs are adjusted
There are a lot of
accordingly.
people that want to do it. And I spoke with Russia about it. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I think they understand. They're not going back in. Once we do this, they're not going back in.
So no chance
on that gold card.
aircraft. Would the U.S. provide, for instance, air defense?
Well, I just told you, right now we're not providing anything. You know, it's about Europe, too. Europe put in $100 billion, and we put in $350 billion. It's not a fair thing. You know, we would normally say, and I say it now anyway, but we want equalization. They should put up actually more money than us because they're right there. We have an ocean in between. But we've had very good talks with Russia. We've had very good talks with Ukraine, and we think it maybe will come to an end and we'll stop killing young people all over the battlefield and elsewhere.
On Europe, so do you plan to maintain heavy military presence in Europe in the long term, like tens of thousands of troops?
We'll be involved. Yeah, we'll be involved in Europe. We're involved in Europe now. Europe is our friend. They take advantage of us on trade. We don't like that. What the EU does, we don't like that. But we'll solve that the old-fashioned way. We'll give them the same reciprocal numbers. You know, we're talking about a reciprocal tax. You know that. And if they charge us, we charge them. Right now, they charge us much, much more than we charge them. And they have non-monetary taxes also and tariffs. And we're going to change that. It's all changing. It's all.
All right, we got somebody dialing in here, Justin. All right, Justin, what's going on?
Hey, just came upon your podcast or live stream. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Hey, yeah. So I just wanted to talk about how I understand there's a lot of division and hate between the parties and whatnot, and I am not really a Trump supporter at all. I mean, granted, I think he's a terrible person, a terrible leader, and has a lot of issues and has caused a lot of negative things because of his actions. But I always, I mean, granted, I'm not like a devout Christian all the time, but I always pray for him. I say, I pray for him to make the right decisions and whatnot, because he's our leader. And despite what he's even doing wrong, we should try to support him in that way. But the thing that really ticks me off is the environmental stuff, and the fact that he just denies or doesn't care about the truth about science when it comes to the climate crisis and pollution, which, in my opinion, is the biggest threats to humanity right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that was a handful of stuff I just garbled out. So
No, that's no problem. That's no problem. Everybody's got like quite a few things on their minds. I appreciate you hitting the button to dial in to kind of highlight some of that.
Yeah.
So that's your biggest, I guess, point of exception with Trump and his policies right now.
Yeah, like I do not like his plans with the Department of Education or potential plans to cut Medicaid. One thing, some things I agree with is cutting birthright citizenship to people who are coming here illegally and then having a baby. I'm kind of against that, and I don't mean to be cold-hearted. I can understand, wanting to come here and make a better life, but if you come here illegally and then just have a baby so you can latch yourself in, you're kind of cheating the system.
You're working the system, yeah.
Right, and
otherwise, the funny thing is I think the amendment says something to the extent of you are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, or something like that, right? To where it's like, well, wait a minute, does that mean that you have to have some status already for
right? I would think so. I don't know. don't
I don't know
remember
what it means
seeing that. I would
legally,
have to
but
check
just
it
reasonably, it
again.
sounds like it, right? I don't know.
But yeah, I would have to look at it again. But I think it might be right. I would think so.
Yeah,
But
what they're going off of is that line in there.
yeah, I mean, in my opinion, him doing that is mostly based on, and this is my honest opinion. If you have a different opinion, I'll, fine, that's fine. But I think it's mostly influenced by racism more than protecting America. So, I mean, just based
What
on
gives you
everything
that
he talks
impression?
about. I'm sorry?
What gives you, or like, how do you get to, I guess, to that conclusion?
Well, I mean, just look at how Obama was talking. I mean, Obama, his nickname was the deporter in chief. And, he had some strong views about, yeah, we need to send back people who come here illegally. But the way he talked about it was very gentlemanly and very open hearted. Whereas, Trump is like, oh, they're coming here to rape, they're coming here to murder. And it's like, okay, yeah, granted, a lot of illegals are,
And you
I don't
take
want to
that
say
as a
bad
sign
people, but yeah, a lot of them are criminals.
racism?
But I'm sorry? Sorry.
You take that as a sign of, I guess, racism then? To
I
kind
mean,
of restrict to people like that, or
just a lot of
maybe
other
it gives
things
people
too.
that feeling of animosity that towards him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there is some, people just using the race card. I don't know, but like how he brings up, oh, brown jobs, and there's stealing the jobs, and then when they hear that, then it just gets racists all pissed off. I mean, you see videos of jerks even saying to Mexican workers like, oh, you're stealing our jobs, and now him saying this stuff, yeah, it causes people to get angry at like even Mexican American citizens, that were born here just because of the stuff, how he's saying it. If he were to word it better, then I'd support him in it. But the way he's wording it is just very hateful and not really helping. If he worded it the way Obama did, or even just was more lighthearted, it would not have the negative, connotation, the negative stuff to it. So
the straightforward stuff is okay, just if he could smooth out the rough edges, being brash.
Right. I mean, I'm sorry, but I do honestly think he is a racist. And to be honest, I'm sure everyone has their issues and whatever, but everything he does seems to be towards the extreme. And motivated by hate, it seems like a lot of the time. But that's why I'm thinking with the whole going against pollution, fighting pollution and environmental stuff, I don't know why he's doing that. I don't know why he's denying that and why that's such a big part of the Republican Party. Like they just are like, oh, it's just people are crying out that the sky is falling, but it's like if you look at the data, it seems to be pointing towards that the fact that the planet is on the verge of collapse, environmental collapse.
That whole that whole situation's just had issues over the year. The perpetual 10-year timeframes. I think people may have forgotten the scandal of data manipulation and the email exchanges that went back and forth.
Right, but I mean,
I think a lot of that stuff has caused issues with credibility with enough people now.
That's true. No, that's an honest fact. That there has been data manipulation, and there are climate scientists and environmentalists that abuse it to even get money. Like those organizations that, please send money to us and we can help. But really, it's just a profit organization.
Crypto coins. Somebody tried to get me to buy.
Stuff,
right? Like, wait a minute, what are you doing?
Yeah, but I mean, just traveling myself, and just looking at the news and everything, I've seen, firsthand what happens. Like in Australia, the heat waves are causing like thousands of bats just to drop out of the sky dead. And then with the rising temperatures in the ocean, like billions of fish are dying, algae blooms, red tide. I mean, I don't know why these people, people don't think
let me
that
throw a thought out there for you, and just see what you think. Okay, like
Sorry. Yeah.
Personally,
Sorry if I
I'm-
talk over you too. This is my first time
Oh, no,
talking
that's
on a
no
live
big deal,
stream.
man.
So
We're just chatting. No big deal. No big deal. And I mean, I'd like to promote people to come in and express their thoughts and stuff, and we don't have to have like these crazy arguments or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we should have clean water, clean air. Like I'm all in on that.
Yeah.
We don't need to have toxic waste dumped on land or all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So we should control that. Nobody wants to live with that, right?
Right.
The idea that there's impending doom, I have difficulty with, and the idea too that humans are playing a strong hand in it, versus there being these massive cycles that the Earth undergoes. I have a difficult time differentiating kind of correlation and causality on that stuff, and I've looked at data, and I haven't studied it close enough to where I could just like spit stuff out left and right, but I'm still stuck on that part of it. But I mean, I'm all for like, let's protect the environment and keep it clean, and you know what I mean? Like, because nobody wants to breathe like smoggy air and all that,
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And
So I think if the more practical type of, approach might be the way to go right now, instead of, the kind of like the doomsday thing, right? Like sometimes there's religious folks that come out there and, come heavy-handed, and it turns people off with things, right? With like, oh, everything's going to end soon or whatever.
Right. No,
it's the
of
same
course.
kind of sentiment. Anyway, it's my observation. But
Well, when you talk about the cycles, here's a fun fact: the ice age, if lasted, I think between 2.1 to 1.5 million years,
Mhm.
and it only ended 11,000 years ago. So that means in this current age, it's only been 11,000 years. Yet the amount, or just the severity of how the climate has changed and how nature has been changed, it's way too fast and severe. And I understand, everyone brings up the cycles, but this is just too fast. I mean, if you look up the data, and I can understand you being, hesitant, but who's to say that, the data you're looking at is saying that the data's, changed or something, I know
I don't
it's
know.
hard
I mean,
to-
and I talk to like PhD geologists and stuff, because it's like sometimes when they talk about like the samples of different layers,
right,
of the Earth and stuff. I scratch my head. I gotta be honest.
No. Yeah, no, but no, that makes sense. Yeah, when I was getting back into this stuff, because I was kind of a big science nerd in college and in high school, so getting back into this stuff and trying to understand like geology and whatnot. Yeah, and that can.
And
but
I've had them be go both ways on it. When I talk to geologists, meteorologists are more universally, well, at least the ones I've talked to and the ones that I listen to online. Joe Bastardi is one that I've watched quite a bit.
I think I've
Great
heard of him.
long-range forecaster. He called Katrina way back when. He's called the polar vortex. He called this current storm. Helped me make a little cash on the natural gas. Joe Bastardi.
I think I remember
Let me look up his X.
Bastardi. Okay.
Joe Bastardi.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of someone else. Yeah, I was thinking of someone else.
Big Joe Bastardi. Hang on a sec. Let me get his X account. I'm just going to pin it in the chat. Or not. Yeah, well, you know what I mean. I'll like put it in the chat here. Joe Bastardi.
Yeah, I just looked him up. His thing. Well, yeah. I mean, like you said,
Anyway.
like I can say though, I'm sure that I can, look up meteorologists and other scientists that, and in fact, I'm sure there's more that agree that climate change and
Yeah,
environmental
there
collapse.
There definitely
And,
are. And I'm like
once
confused.
I know it sucks when like even scientists are like saying yes or no on both sides, and it's like so it can
Yeah.
get very infuriating. But I mean, if you really do the research, you'll see it. I mean, just from the mass die-offs in the oceans, and then the fact that another scary fact is that clearly the ice caps are melting faster than realized, and it's getting hotter. Well, in Russia and in some parts of Asia, there's something called permafrost. Under tens to hundreds of feet of snow. That's like solid ground. And now that it's getting warmer, the animals and little biological everything that was frozen under there is starting to decompose, which then creates more carbon. And you can look it up, because the biggest thing that's coming out of that is, oh wow, we're finding more mammoth fossils, we're finding more mammoth remains and everything. So that's not helping, either, with all this decomposition happening while the snow is melting. And I'm sorry if I'm talking a mile a minute. I'm just, usually not up this late. But and then one thing that just gets me is, like, I understand, everyone thinks that the planet can deal with it, but the planet has never dealt with our species. It's never dealt with thousands of factories puttering off, God knows what, or billions of vehicles puttering off, carbon monoxide. It's never dealt with that. And if it's going to deal with it, the way it deals with it is, I'm not trying to say the planet is a living thing, but I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a whack job, but who's to say it isn't? I mean, look what happens. Storms become more severe because of the fast and rapid changes in the climate and weather. If it gets too hot or too cold too fast, it'll create more violent and severe storms. So, I mean, to me, it just seems like the planet is like having a flu, and just like in a flu, you're gonna heat up, and so I don't know. I'm just trying to say, like, it seems like all the signs point towards the fact that the main thing should be, and I'm not trying to sound like a hippie, but I mean, honestly, we're gonna get to the point where it's gonna affect like keystone species, like that. If one species dies. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I almost thought you were going to say the pipeline, because I've been thinking about the pipeline lately.
Oh, I know, me too. I wonder how that's going to turn out, but like you said, that's what I'm afraid of. And I'm all, I understand the whole dig, baby, dig, we still need oil, and I understand that. But if you could at least acknowledge it, like, yes, it's a big issue and we need to take care of it. But just how willy-nilly he is with some issues, like, just, oh, I don't care, or it doesn't matter.
That's the disconnect. For me, I'll just speak for myself. Is the level of urgency? Is it really something that's imminent? Like, if we don't do X,
I mean,
by this date, then it's all over in 10 years.
No, not 10 years. I mean, it could become dire in probably, I would say 20 to 30. I would say, yeah.
Sorry, when I was in grade school, it was like by the year 2000. Then it was like by 2010. Did Al Gore say 2010? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, anyway, I know. I remember.
That date's like past at this point, right? Whatever it was.
Well, but we are seeing mass die-offs of animals. That's the thing. I mean, look at polar bears. They're dying more, faster than normal.
With that too, I wonder, because there's the social media effect, right? Where all these awful things are all of a sudden happening, and then I wonder, is it just because more people are recording it and posting it? Like, is it just we have better sensors and people out there observing these things happening that we know about it? I don't. We don't have a good baseline on that, and I'm not trying to like be skeptical of everything. It's just like I have a difficult time when imminent doom is kind of presented.
No, I totally get it. No, I'm, that's a good point. I was I'm 32, and I'm like, wow, amazed by all this stuff. But then I think, oh, maybe it's just because everyone has a camera phone. So, but you could be right. But I mean, I just have to side with nature, because like I said, the Earth has never dealt with this type of pollution before, or this type of, carbon emissions before. It's never dealt with this. Even with the nuclear testing, it's never had nuclear events occur on this planet. I mean,
yeah, the nuclear stuff's no bueno for sure. But like with the excess carbon, the Earth's become greener than it ever has been since they started doing satellite imagery.
That it's become greener?
We're greener now than whenever satellite imagery started, and they could say like the surface area is X percentage forest and green. We're greener now than ever before in recorded satellite imagery history.
Well, yeah, because I mean that makes sense. Because in the last couple decades, we've really tried to, emphasize environmentalism. Like I,
Well, it's
said, I'm 32, and I grew up during the age of Animal Planet and Discovery Channel when teaching kids about, yeah, give a hoot, don't pollute, and all that stuff.
I mean,
So,
the levels have increased though of CO2. Like CO2 has continuously gone up globally.
oh, I thought you
We,
meant the green. Okay, yeah, the
we
greenhouse
tapered
effect.
off.
You meant okay.
Yeah,
I thought you mean like the green.
like plant
Uh,
life.
so wait, you're saying both went up then?
CO2 has gone up, and the volume of plant life has gone up significantly.
Okay, yeah, I still stick with my comment on the green. Plants. Being more plentiful and flowering trees and whatnot. And yeah, that makes sense that greenhouse gases have increased because we're building more stuff.
Yeah, it's also just consuming that stuff.
Right. I mean, the key thing is how to deal with the waste. That's the thing. If we can figure out a way to fix, not wasting stuff, like maybe stopping, recycle more. Or if you want to use oil, then make sure the, toxic fumes don't get into the atmosphere. Or try to reuse whatever you can whenever you can. Like to be honest, like when I was bringing my neighbor's kids to McDonald's, I'm like disgusted with like, wow, these little plastic toys, like how many millions of these do they make? And even going to like Dollar Tree, I'm like, all this plastic and everything. But again, we're going off topic. We should be talking about Trump and whatnot.
No,
So
that's fine. I mean,
sorry.
it's all related, right? It's all
But
related.
yeah, and I understand what you said about the cycles, but I combat with that saying, well, it's only been 11,000 years since getting out of the million-year ice age, and it's going too fast. The warming and the climate shift is going way too fast than normal, and everyone having an iPhone thing, that's true, but I mean, it's in recorded history, ocean temperatures have gone up, billions of sea life is dying, and then not to mention, I kind of blame China. They're having the biggest ecological impact than any other country. Like they're doing more damage,
Yeah.
than any other nation.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's all. I mean, and then with everything else about Trump, I support trying to, secure our border. I'm all for that. And I am happy he did label, the cartels as a terrorist organization. To be honest, that made me really happy. I was like, why haven't we done that yet? So,
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? Like what's going on with that?
yeah. So, but I don't think it's going to play out where we send troops, or if we do, what we'll most likely do is buddy up with a cartel and then have to install that cartel. Kind of like what he did with the Taliban, which even though I don't agree with making deals with the Taliban, kind of something like that when he, made a deal with the Taliban saying, okay, you can have Afghanistan only if you help fight ISIS or whoever.
Yeah.
So,
well, hey, Justin, man, I'm going to give you just a couple of stats, and I gotta.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for talking so much. It's
no
it's my first
worries.
time
It's no
on
big
live
deal. So I put a couple of polls out there. I don't know if you noticed them. One was on the do you support? Wait a minute. Yeah, do you support Trump's changes to birthright citizenship? 74% to 26% yes from the live stream viewers. And right now, the current poll is: do you think global warming is a major threat? Only 27 votes so far, but it's 81% no to 19%
Hold
yes.
Hold on. Oh no. What the hell? Okay, I think I lost you. Hello?
No, I'm here still.
Yeah, I think I lost you.
All right, that's all right. Hey, I appreciate you dialing in. All right, guys. I think that we may have to finish. How much time do we got left on this? Well, about 11 minutes. We're going to have to wrap that up at another time. I need to call it an evening, but I will leave you with, I'll leave you guys with the theme song. Let me know. It's a new one for 2025. It's an upgraded version. I'll put a poll out on it. How about that? Hang on, let me get that poll going before. Whatever. Kind of like, give me a poll. What do you think of the new theme song? Bueno. No bueno. All right. And if anybody hears the dubstep in the background, it was custom made this year. All right. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be online again very soon. Like, subscribe. Appreciate you guys.
In the shadow she lurks, a digital sage. Her words cut through like a sharpened blade. Political cow, her voice brings rage. A rebel in the neon-born parade. With a keyboard she wields her might, piercing lies with truth so light. Drifting through the endless night, exposing wrongs to make them right. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows through every corner, every show. A beacon where the lost clouds glow. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows through every corner, every show. A beacon where the lost grounds glow. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word.